across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Company. What on earth is going on with the justice system in this country? That's what I want to know. We have this Labour councillor, Ricky Jones. He's been cleared of encouraging violent behaviour. He said the demonstrators were disgusting Nazi fascists and we need to get rid of them all. But he said it was not intended to incite or encourage violence. I'll tell you something else that was deemed to have incited violence. Someone who was sent to prison for 31 months for saying mass deportations now, set fire to all the effing hotels full of the bees for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it. What is so different between what Ricky Jones did and what Lucy Connolly did? She is in prison. She rests there. She is rotting in prison for 31 months. And Ricky Jones is a free man today. Is there two-tier justice in this country? Of course there is. It's also Victory in Japan Day, something we can be very proud of in this country. That's why the flags are staying up. Kevin was going to take them with him, but we're keeping the flags behind me up because it's Victory in Japan Day. And also because apparently, according to Birmingham Council, they should be taken down because they're a risk to people. Apparently all the pro-Palestinian flags and all the Palestinian flags up are absolutely fine and not a risk to people, according to Birmingham City Council. We'll talk as well about the huge issue of the Alaska summit. We'll get all the latest on that. I want your views on all of this, including the TikTok migrant who taunted Brits filming a sick how to kill your wife rant for followers. He's in this country. He absolutely should not be. He should be deported back to whence he came ASAP. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV, follow me at Peter Cardwell. Send me a voice note, less than a minute please, to 0344 499 1000. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or indeed give me a ring on that number as well. Plenty to discuss before Ian Collins comes up at 7 o'clock. Stay with me here on Talk. So I just first and foremost want to remind ourselves of what this person, Ricky Jones, the Labour councillor, he called for far-right protesters' throats to be cut at an anti-racism rally. He's been found guilty not guilty of encouraging violent disorder. This was at Snaresbrook Crown Court. He called demonstrators disgusting Nazi fascists and said, "We need to get rid of them all," while addressing a crowd in Walthamstow on the 7th of August last year. He told police his remarks were ill-advised and not intended to incite or encourage violence. Let's have a look and a listen to what he did, and you can decide whether you think it was not intended to incite or encourage violence. This is what he did.
We've got children and women using those trains, destroying the summer relatives. They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all.
We need to cut their throats. We need to get rid of them all. But apparently that is not intended to incite or encourage violence. At the same time, he did a gesture, a throat-cutting gesture, but that apparently is not intended to incite or encourage violence. Pull the other one, Mr. Jones. That is absolute bunkum. The court has been hoodwinked. The video shows him what he said and what he did. He drew his finger across his throat as he spoke to the crowd. He said it was his duty, he felt, as an elected representative for the Labour Party, from which he has been suspended, to attend counter-protests. Jurors deliberated for just over half an hour, before finding him not guilty today. At the time of the incident, he was employed as a full-time official for the Transport Salary Staff Association, a union, of course. He had been a borough councillor since 2019, but suspended by the Labour Party on the 8th of August last year, the day after this happened. And good for the Labour Party for suspending him within 24 hours. That was the right thing to do. But he should now be convicted of something. In fact, he is not convicted of anything. Let's speak to Norman Brennan. He's a former police officer. Norman, this kind of thing just absolutely feeds into the narrative. It is two-tier justice, first and foremost.
Well, it certainly appears that way. Many people are shocked, including myself. that there wasn't a conviction. Obviously, unlike the jury, I didn't hear every single syllable of every piece of evidence. However, I did see that he introduced a lot of irrelevant stuff that I would normally see a defendant or suspect use as mitigation. But what he did is he used it as a defence about he was bullied at school and goodness knows what. And it's quite amazing that these individuals suddenly remember all this when they have allegedly said something that's caused them to be arrested and charged and put before the courts. So I think the jury have either been confused or hoodwinked or have just got it wrong. But that's their decision and we can't really argue with that. But of course, yes, we can discuss it. Now, what he was saying and what he was doing and gesticulating about putting his hand below the neck to basically kill people is not incitement to cause public disorder, is beyond me, especially when Britain was in the grip of public disorder and he was lecturing to literally thousands of people on a public street.
The Shadow Deputy Prime Minister, James Cleverly, has said the verdict is unacceptable. He says perverse decisions like this are adding to the anger that people feel and amplifying the belief that there isn't a dispassionate criminal justice system. Speaking of a dispassionate criminal justice system, Lucy Connolly, who is in prison at the moment, she was convicted of something different, a different thing to which she pleaded guilty. At the same time, to me and to many people on the streets, they may not be fully conversant with every aspect of the law, but the fact is Lucy Connolly was convicted very quickly. She's in prison at the moment. Ricky Jones will serve no time in prison. He will walk free from this. And many people will compare the two things that happened around the same time, used similar language, and yet one goes in one direction, one goes in the other direction. One is the wife of a Conservative councillor who was saying things against one group. The other is a Labour councillor saying things about another group. There are clear inferences that people will take from that, Norman.
I can understand why people do. Lucy Connolly, again, posted something that was inflammatory, and what she'd actually done is posted along the lines that you go out and burn down hotels or mosques.
Yeah, I'll read you exactly what she said, and I do not condone this at all. I don't think she should have tweeted this. I think she should have probably got a caution, or perhaps some community service or something like that. It was ill-advised, it was stupid, it was offensive, and she shouldn't have done it. She posted in July, mass deportation now, set fire to all the effing hotels full of the bees for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it. Yet if someone says we need to get rid of them all and makes a gesture of cutting his throat, that's not incitement to violence, apparently. I mean, this is baffling.
Look, I completely understand what you say, Peter. When this all kicked off, I was one of the main people on social media that warned everybody. I said, stop posting what you're saying. You are going to be nicked.
Yep.
And the fever pitch was such that millions of people were actually posting what was commonly known as misinformation. The reason why Lucy was put before the courts very quickly was similarly to after the 2011 riots. Anyone involved in those riots or inciting people to go to the streets were quickly delivered justice. Now, I can see why people were upset. What she said was inflammatory, and as I said, it was an incitement. However, comparing it against this case, I can understand. Should she have gone to prison for such a long period of time? Had she posted that outside any public disorder, I think she would have been unlucky to have even received a suspended sentence. I think that the criminal justice system does have an imbalance, and I must admit, I'm confused at some of the jury's decisions, and I rarely criticise juries, but today I would say that I don't really know what evidence they listen to, because what I see and my experience in law and order, which is best part of 47 years, I didn't think he had much defence, only mitigation, but it appears that the may have hoodwinked the jury within 30 minutes. He's now a free man, and as you're right, it's caused a lot of outrage across Britain.
I couldn't care less if he was bullied at school. I was bullied at school. Doesn't mean I go around calling for people to be killed. I wonder, Norman, if you think, we don't know what went through the jury's mind. Neither of us know every single thing the jury was told, but we know what we see and we know what we can compare it to, and we're also representing in this conversation a heck of a lot of public opinion, a heck of a lot of people who I can see contacting me, ringing me, tweeting me, texting me, telling me what they think, and it's along the lines of what we're saying, Norman. I wonder whether the passage of time is an issue here. Lucy Connolly was convicted very quickly. She was put in prison very quickly, very shortly after what she did. And Keir Starmer wanted to make an example of people. He essentially directed the Crown Prosecution Service and the justice system to put people, to convict people and to, well, not to convict people, but to hear the trials and to make sure justice was done as he would see it as soon as possible. This happened a year later. I would really question whether the passage of time, people saying, no, you know, it's a year on, you know, was it that serious at the time? You know, all those sorts of issues could be a factor in this.
If you commit a crime, certainly of incitement or riot or public disorder and violent disorder, affray, attacking the police, trying to burn down mosques, etc., during public disorder, it's only right and proper that you are put before the criminal justice system very quickly. It has to act as a deterrent. Had Ricky Jones been convicted today, my understanding was that those inflammatory comments were made during the period that I've just discussed, and he too would have faced going to prison like Lucy Connolly.
Yeah.
He has not, for what he said, and I can completely understand that why people are saying there's two-tier justice, and it appears that some people are convicted and getting very long sentences and others walk away free. And you've got to ask yourself, what message does it send out? That you can say one thing and go to prison, as you rightly highlighted at the beginning, or you'll be acquitted for saying something almost equally as appalling and awful, yet walk out of the courts. Yes, I can understand why people are very outraged and while they've got their head in their hands worrying what's happened to our criminal justice system, because for some people it's justice and for others a big injustice.
Equality in front of the law, equality before the law, that is all that people ask for. I don't think this has happened in this case. Thank you, Norman. That's Norman Brennan there, who's a former police officer. I appreciate him joining me on the show today. Just want to play you again what Ricky Jones said and did. If you're listening on the radio, you won't see, of course, the gesture that he made, which was a throat-cutting gesture. Let's have a look and listen to what he said on the 7th of August last year.
We've got children and women using those trains, destroying the summer holidays. They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cut their throats and get rid of them all.
Yeah. Greg's in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Greg, what do you think of this?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think the whole problem is that Lucy Connolly was very, very badly advised not to go for a jury trial. Why on earth she was advised to not go to a jury trial, I cannot imagine.
And plead guilty to a very serious offence.
That's right. I cannot imagine that a jury would have found Lucy Connolly guilty. And to be honest with you, I would not have found Jones guilty.
Why not?
Simply because I don't actually think he would have thought that following his stupid inflammatory remarks, that people would then go and arm themselves with sharp objects.
But that is exactly what people were doing at that time on the other side of the argument. So he was. Hold on a second, Greg. He was in a very, very volatile situation. He's a community leader. He's got thousands of people around him, as you can see in the footage, and he's making throat-cutting gestures.
I am in no sense defending Jones. I think he's a nasty, horrible person. And to be honest with you, if he had not gone to a jury trial, I suspect he would be banged up now. The big question is, why on earth Lucy Connolly's advisors advised her not to go to a jury trial? It's a stain on the legal profession.
Well, when Lucy Connolly is out of prison, I really hope that I or one of my colleagues get to interview her to talk through the whole thing.
Believe me, Peter, you'll be you'll be in the middle of a queue of hundreds of people
totally.
to interview her.
Totally. Okay, Greg, thanks for your...
I think the government is dreading the day she's released.
Well, I totally agree with you, Greg. Thanks for your thoughts there. Very interesting. Khaled's in Leicester and has some thoughts on Ricky Jones. Khaled, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I think, look, sometimes people say things on the spur of the moment. He shouldn't have. I'm not defending what he said. But at the same time, sometimes in the heat of the moment, adrenaline kicking in, people say things and do things. I mean, look, he's been through the jury trial. Juries acquitted him. So I think, but having said that, people who in senior positions, people with power, people in like MPs, etc., they have to be very careful with what they say. For example, the Braverman, when she said this is an invasion, the very next day, one of the Dover units which was housing immigrants, it was set on fire. It was an arson attack. Very next day. So
do you think Lucy Connolly should be in prison?
Personally, she's a mother. I think that she, maybe a community service or something would have been sufficient. I don't personally. I wouldn't want to put it. If I was on the jury, I would have never put her in prison personally. Okay. Right, because being a mother. And there are lots of very nasty mothers out there. There are lots of very nasty pensioners out there. There are lots of people who, it doesn't, just because they have caring responsibilities doesn't necessarily make them a good person. No. I agree with you on this. Obviously, but I say the punishment's got to fit the crime. I don't think it's got to be. But the rule has to be across the board, Peter. Look, at the end of the day. The thing is, look, for example, we have to be consistent ourselves. From a citizen's point of view, if I was on the jury, there has to be consistency. We shouldn't be prejudice in my assumption. Mm-hmm. For example, like we got 500. There's 500 statements. 500 statements made by Israeli MPs who are calling for the destruction of Gaza, the ethnic cleansing, the killing of every single person, man, woman, child, calling for the annihilation of every single baby.
You've taken about 2 minutes and we've read it about Israel. This discussion isn't about Israel. We can discuss that another time, Khaled. But listen, thanks for your comments. And on the substantive point in regard to Lucy Connolly and indeed Ricky Jones, I think we agree. So thank you. Sean says, let's be honest, Peter, if Ricky Jones had been found guilty, we all know the judge would have let him off with the lightest possible sanction. He's Labour. Lucy Connolly was a Conservative. That is Sean in Bridlington who says that. Michelle says, I'm furious. This stinks. I wonder who that jury comprised of. Someone actually inciting violence walks free. There's no trust left. I want out. Becca says there's no incitement in Lucy Connolly's tweet. It's an opinion. Ricky Jones is a recorded incitement to kill. Well, the justice system thinks differently, Becca, but it's clearly not working at the moment. Liam says, can you explain to me how a jury can take 30 minutes to come to a not guilty verdict when I know of a case where a judge ordered the jury to take more time? A clear example of how far this country has fallen, and more importantly, do I have any faith left in the justice system? No, I do not. Well, half an hour is a very, very small amount of time. It's a very short amount of time, so I think that's a perfectly reasonable point to make. Rachel says, I'm usually a huge supporter of jury trial, but today I found myself questioning it. They were only out half an hour. I think the jury was clearly biased. Chris says, we need to see the judges summing up. I think this has to be the root of the problem. Margaret in Birmingham says, good afternoon, Peter. If you watch the video with that councillor and his vile speech, watch the lady to his left cheering him on. Two-tier justice, 2 words, Lucy Connolly, says Margaret in Birmingham. We'll continue to talk about this. The calls, text, tweets are coming in. Get your call in, get your voice note in, 0344 499 1000.
I am not hopeful that there's going to be any big grand resolution. I think that there's going to be a lot of discussion about Ukraine, Russia, but I think that a lot of the topics are going to involve the relationship diplomatically, business.
I just think it will damage even further the confidence that people have in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I just think that people will be listening to this and watching and thinking about the whole two-tier dynamic, which of course has been more and more accentuated, I think, over the last 12 months.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I want to talk now about the TikTok migrant who taunted British people filming a how to kill your wife rant for followers weeks before arriving in the UK. This is a horrendous story. It is covered in The Sun today. Henry Bolton is with us, the international border control expert who's a Social Democratic Party spokesman for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Security. This scumbag, and he is a scumbag, is in our country, Parwiz Hanifar, who is behind an account called Alexandra 420. And we know the 420, we know what that refers to, of course, it's cannabis. He told 70,000 followers how to cover up their crimes in a video filmed in Germany. He even urges them to sink alcohol before attacking someone to get a softer sentence. I don't want this person anywhere near my country, Henry.
No, nor do I, Peter, and nor do I think anybody in the United Kingdom does. But what we'll have is we'll have a whole bunch of people saying this individual is an exception and that they're always bad apples. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't cut it with me, because I spent 2.5 years in Afghanistan. I've worked across Central Asia. I've worked in parts of Africa. You know, the reality is that people from those parts of the world come from a different culture in which the infanticide of baby girls is common. In Pakistan, they find 1,200 to 1,500 baby girls in rubbish tips every year. That's because culturally, boys can work and help support the household. Girls are a burden. And there's, you know, there's depth to that. There's history going back centuries, but they've got centuries of piled up culture there that leads to an attitude towards women and girls that is frankly abhorrent to our society. And that is normal, particularly in rural areas of these places, particularly in Afghanistan, Pakistan, to a large extent in Sudan and Somalia. And these are countries that we have a huge number of illegal and legal migration from. We've got a lot of people coming here from those areas. And of course, when you don't make any effort, as we don't, to assimilate these people into our culture, our values, our laws, and so on, then they are bringing them with them, and they embed them in our society. And so this is not a one-off, Peter. If it was a one-off, I'd be telling you, but it's not. Yeah. And nobody who was in Afghanistan, who worked with the Afghans, nobody who spent time in Pakistan, nobody who spent time in Sudan and Somalia will contradict me.
Yeah, listen, and he held a live Q&A from his room at the Crown Plaza Hotel, which is near Heathrow as well. He's been put up in a nice hotel. He's someone we're treating very, very well, when he's treated many people, including Afghan women, tremendously badly. He has advocated horrible things as well. Surely they could simply arrest him.
Yeah, it's difficult to say what offences he's committed here.
Yes, sure.
You know, one of the things that I've advocated, Peter, is that, you know, anybody who enters this country illegally has broken the law. And the law states that they can be detained. We're not detaining them because the government won't put the resources into it. They won't make the decision to do it because particularly this government is kowtowing to the Muslim vote and to the left-wing activists who want open borders. So, you know, a lot of MPs are reliant on those people for their vote. So this government can't expect this government to do anything about it. But the law is there. The law can be used. These people can be detained. The UN Refugee Convention allows it. Of course, we'll get legal challenges through the ECHR and so on. But what we desperately lack in this country, and the last government was not much better, is statesman-like leadership that actually takes the morally correct and courageous decision to actually protect the British public from people like this individual we are letting in, frankly, as I'm saying, you know, from these cultures every day of the week virtually. My point is that I don't think this individual, he's got 70,000 TikTok followers or whatever, but I don't think that gives him an additional reach. But I don't think his attitude is much different to a great many of the people who we're letting into this country on a daily basis. What we need to do, if we don't know whether they're a threat to our society or not, these individuals. We don't know who they are, most of them. And we don't know what their attitudes are, what their behavior is, what their past, you know, crimes are, or whether it would be called a crime in their country. We have no idea what threat they constitute to the British public. And yet we're putting them in hotels and we're putting them in affordable housing around the country. This is a government that is, quite frankly, turning a blind eye to a significant public security threat. People will die. I don't want to dramatize this because I've recently been saying I hate people dramatizing it. But at the same time, I hate a government that is not doing its job to protect the British people. And it's not. And this is a good example.
Okay. Henry, thank you. That's Henry Bolton there, International Border Control expert. He's also the SDP spokesman for Foreign Affairs, Defence and Security. Thanks to everybody who is in touch in regard to what's happening with Ricky Jones, Councillor Ricky Jones, who has been acquitted, completely cleared of any incitement or any criminal offence when he talked about slitting people's throats and getting rid of them in the riots last year. Ash in Slough says, kneecap, say kill your local Conservative Tory MP. Well, I actually said kill your local MP, not just Tory MP. You'll kill your local MP, and they said the only good Tory is a dead Tory. So yeah, I know what you mean, Ash, but I just want to be accurate. He says, hi Cardi P, kneecap, no charges. Bob Villan, death to the IDF. No charges brought after a month. Lucy Connolly expresses extreme indifference for all I care. 31 months on a regular punishment in prison with removal of privileges. I smell a rat, says Ash in Slough. Tony is from Grimsby. Tony, I don't think we've spoken before. You want to tell me your thoughts on Councillor Ricky Jones? You're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
It's brilliant. I watch it every day. First time.
Thank you. Great to talk to you.
I think it's absolutely disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. What's going on in this country at the moment is disgusting.
I mean, this was a jury trial, Tony.
On national television in front of literally millions of people.
Yeah.
It's disgraceful.
I mean, it's so straightforward. It's so straightforward what he did. And the kind of language he used. A blind man on a galloping horse doesn't need to know about the fact that he was bullied at school or that he has mental health issues or whatever. The fact is he is a community leader standing in front of thousands of people calling for people to be killed. That's what happened.
Right, listen, I've got mental health issues and I don't go around saying people should have their heads cut off and throats cut. You know, and I just think it's just disgraceful. That woman's in prison still. It's dreadful.
Yeah. Listen,
what's happening in this country at the minute?
Well, I think and the problem is that justice is meant to be completely blind. It is meant to be completely fair at all times. Do you feel that's the case, Tony? Because I'm not sure I do.
I was just about to say, I was going to cut you off and say, but at the moment, it's not.
Yeah.
Not in any way whatsoever.
Even the length of time, Tony, I'm really suspicious. Lucy Connolly, really quickly, all those rioters, I'm not saying for a second any of them shouldn't have been in court. I'm not saying the law shouldn't have been implemented. Of course it should. Lucy Connolly, I think, should have got a caution or community service or something like that. I don't think she should have been put in prison. But the fact is that was dealt with really quickly.
My son watches this programme nearly every day. He loves it too. But I've said to him before, she shouldn't have said what she said.
Yeah.
But she immediately regretted what she said. So that was before she'd even been in touch with the police. And yet she's been severely punished.
Yeah.
And this guy's got away with basically telling people to cut women and kids' heads off.
Yeah. Yeah, through Speak Up, but yeah, it is absolutely horrendous. Tony, listen, thanks for your thoughts, appreciate that. Lots of people getting in touch. Andy in Thatcham says the day Lucy Connolly is going to get out is going to be a bad day for two-tier care. I don't think we realise how monumental this not guilty verdict is going to become now. This is going to become a political earthquake. I know there are completely different cases. One pled guilty, one pled not guilty. The advice that was given to Connolly was bad advice, and this will be something this government is going to rue the day they sent Lucy Connolly to prison and et al, says Andy in Thatcham. Thank you for that. Sophia sent me a lovely message. I'm not going to read it out because it might be a bit self-indulgent, but I do appreciate it, Sophia, very, very much. And Peter says you're looking very presidential with the two union flags behind you. Have you thought of running? There may be a vacancy at number 10 soon. No, elected policy, elected office, certainly not for me. But yes, I've inherited these flags from Kevin O'Sullivan, who had them up. In fact, we're going to be talking a little bit later on about Birmingham Council that says union flags have to come down because they are a hazard, despite the fact they're up on lampposts. They're very dangerous. All those Palestinian flags apparently not a danger at all. If you get hit by a Palestinian flag or indeed a union flag, you'd probably know about it, and certainly if it fell on you with maybe its flagpole, that would be quite bad. But I'm not sure the country or territory it represents is really a matter to worry about. I think it's more to do with whether they're dangerous or whether they're not. I don't think they are, quite frankly. I mean, the number of people who've been hurt by falling flags in recent years, I'm not sure it's something you hear about on the news too often. We'll talk to Hamish de Bretton Gordon in a second, the former British Army colonel and chemical weapons expert, about Trump and Putin. Trump says Putin won't mess around with me as they prepare for those Ukraine talks in Alaska. That's happening in about 4 hours' time. We'll bring you full coverage, of course, here on Talk. Stay with us.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, the Kremlin has been making its views clear in regard to these talks later on. It says the Putin-Trump one-on-one meeting will be with the participation of aides, so it's not just the two men. They'll be with their teams around them. That's usually the case. The Kremlin also says that Russia expects Alaska talks will bring results. The Russian envoy Dmitry Medvedev says the mood ahead of the Putin-Trump talks is combative. Talks will take in the full spectrum of Russia-US relations, not just Ukraine, the Kremlin says. It also says that Alaskan talks must bear results if there's going to be a subsequent three-way meeting. Well, all of that, I suppose, is relatively obvious. But interestingly, those other matters, the Russian-US relations, will be discussed as well. I'm going to talk to Hamish de Bretton Gordon about that in a second. But first of all, let's see what the US President Donald Trump said just before flying to Alaska a few hours ago.
But look, he's a smart guy, been doing it for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are, we're president. That was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia. And that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled.
Let's just remind ourselves of what President Putin said yesterday on possible peace.
Который, как всем хорошо известно, предпринимает.
And secondly, I will tell you about the stage we are at with the current American administration, which, as everyone knows, is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict, in order to create long-term conditions for peace, both between our countries and in Europe, and in the world as a whole. If, at the next stage, we reach agreements in the area of control over strategic offensive weapons.
President Putin there speaking yesterday. Well, Hamish de Bretton-Gordon is a former British Army colonel. He's a chemical weapons expert. Hamish, there's a lot at stake later on. What do you read into the fact that it won't just be Ukraine, but the full gamut of US-Russian relations that will be discussed? Is that a shock in any way to you, or do you think that's just perfectly reasonable?
Yeah, hi, Peter. Good afternoon. I think that is a bit disappointing. I mean, these guys are not speaking for a long time. The reason that they're there is to discuss the ceasefire in Ukraine. Now, the last time they met together in 2019, Putin ran rings around Trump. And that is the concern. But I gather the Russians are also pretty wary and pretty concerned of which President Trump is going to turn up today. Is it going to be the forceful person that absolutely wants a deal? Or is it going to be somebody who gets diverted to start to talk about business? Trump tells us he's the greatest business deal maker in the world. Is he going to want to do a deal on business rather than what the real issue here is to the ceasefire in Ukraine? So as you say, there's a heck of a lot to play for. We've got to hope for the best, but plan for the worst. And the worst, could be pretty desperate for us here in the UK.
So do you think there'll be a muddying of the waters, perhaps, because there have been all sorts of allegations, or allegations may be too strong a word, but speculation, I suppose, that rare earth minerals could be at stake here, there could be business deals. The fact that Putin is bringing many business people with him, he's showing his intention, isn't he, before this meeting, and it's not all about Ukraine's borders.
Well, Putin is the master strategist, without a shadow of a doubt, and the way that he's building up to this, giving faint praise to Trump, because he knows that Trump loves to have his sort of chin tickled, as it were, and building him up. And then perhaps trying to divert him with business deals. As you said, rare earth minerals is something that Trump is terribly keen on. In fact, he's done the deal with Ukraine on that very, very issue. So, I hope that Trump really plays this correctly. Unfortunately, a lot of the people around Trump are amateurs when it comes to diplomacy. Steve Witkoff, his special envoy, went to Russia 2 weeks ago and came back with completely the wrong message. So let's hope that Trump is on his absolute A game, because I think if he's not, the Russians might well sort of divert him into talking about things that are not important for the peace in Europe and peace in Ukraine.
Is there a sense that Trump can simply say, I tried, I did my very best, I had these meetings, maybe even a second meeting involving Zelensky, it didn't work, Putin walked away, he wouldn't give me what I wanted, therefore we're just going to step away from this and let Europe and European allies of Ukraine get on with it?
Well, absolutely. That is the worst case scenario, that he does that. And then it's up to us in Europe to really decide what to do next and pick up the cudgel, as it were, to support Ukraine. Let us hope that Trump, he does want to be the number one leader, as it were, in the world. And he has a real opportunity here. If he can create a just peace for Ukraine and peace in Europe, then, he deserves every accolade that he gets. And I think that will be the main thing driving him on here. But if he walks away and Putin walks away, then, we're in for some pretty dark times. But at least what Trump has done is he's galvanized Europe, We're all now re-equipping our military, spending what we should have done on defence after the end of the Cold War. And actually, you know, militarily, the European nations together are far more powerful than the Russians, but we have not acted as a joint unit, as it were. And let's hope we don't have to. Let's hope that Trump, as I said, has his A game and gets that just ceasefire and peace deal so that we can move forward.
I wonder if you just expand on that thought a bit in terms of the role of the Europeans diplomatically. We've seen those talks at Chevening, the Foreign Secretary's country residence that were asked for by the Americans. We've seen a number of people, including Mark Rutte, the head of NATO, although NATO is a word you don't hear very much in regard to these negotiations because it is such a sensitive topic. I just wonder, when Trump talks, as he did last night, about the other European nations perhaps becoming involved, what role they have. They're very much second string in this at the moment, but of course they could become at the forefront of it, especially if the Americans don't want any part in it.
Well, I think there are two possible roles for the Europeans here. You know, I do take a bit of solace in the fact that the European leaders, after they had their virtual meeting with Trump, seemed to be pretty upbeat, and so was Zelensky. But Europe now must plan on two fronts. If there is a ceasefire, Europe has agreed to provide the military capability to police that ceasefire and make sure that it happens. But if there's not a ceasefire, then Europe is going to have to, you know, potentially look at supporting Ukraine more militarily, and, you know, possibly even by providing jets and boots in the ground to make sure that the Russians are held where they are. Yeah, there is an awful lot to play for. Europe is playing second fiddle at the moment, but, you know, we might be talking this time tomorrow, and Europe is very much in the van of this battle if Trump and the Americans decide to step away.
Just before you go, Hamish, today is, of course, the 80th anniversary of VJ Day, Victory in Japan Day. I'm sure you, like so many millions of people right around the country, paused at 12 o'clock today to remember those veterans. I just wonder, those who gave their life for our freedom, of course, what are your thoughts today on that? Well,
yeah, this is a momentous day. After 6 years of war, we eventually got peace after the Japanese were defeated ostensibly by the greatest British general we've ever had, Field Marshal Slim. It was, of course, ended by the nuclear bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And thank God those nuclear weapons have kept the global peace for the last 80 years. But once again, we are standing on a precipice of potentially warfare in Europe again. But we must not forget, and I think the challenge that perhaps people are having at the moment is most people have some relative or some family association with the Second World War, and this has real resonance for them. And that was the last time, that was the last war which was a generational, it was a nation thing. But we are potentially looking at it again, which is why people like me, who've been a soldier for the last 37 years, you know, we absolutely want peace. War is to be avoided at all costs. But sometimes, as our forebears and as those people who fought in Burma realise, sometimes you do have to fight, but you've got to do everything you can to avoid it. And that's where, you know, Trump comes in the next 4 hours. Yeah. You know, he could make history, or he could make history in a great way, or make it in a terrible way.
Hamish, thank you. Wise words there. This Colonel Hamish de Bretton Gordon there, who's a colonel in the UK Army. He's also a chemical weapons expert as well. Thank you to him. Lots on Ricky Jones. Many people getting in touch. Davy Reese says, hi Peter, the reason why this jury found this councillor not guilty was, in my opinion, because they saw how the government has a two-tier justice system, and they stuck two fingers up at Starmer and his government. Sarah says, presumably calling for death to the extreme left and throat slitting, etc., will be just fine coming from anyone now, including from that huge march in London on the 13th of September and anyone protesting outside an illegals hotel. They set the standard. I'm interested to see what happens next. It's weird how death chants and calls for violence have become acceptable now. We used to have standards, says Sarah in Morden. Sarah? very, very wise words. Lucy says, "Hi Peter, I have English and Irish citizenship and it makes my heart sing to see the Union flag behind you. Everyone would talk if they were to run for MP. I'd vote for you. You're all the voice of a nation. All of you have something that is seriously lacking today. Common sense. Have a fantastic week," says Lucy. Lucy, thank you. That's very, very kind. And of course that common sense is everyone behind the scenes indeed as well. So thank you for that. We're going to talk and reflect further on Victory in Japan Day. A spokesman for the Royal British Legion and a veteran himself is going to join us. Did you stop at 12 o'clock today? I certainly did. I was just at home. I was just standing in my living room, but I certainly stopped and stood and remembered those who gave their freedom and indeed gave their lives for our freedom. And Anthony Metcalf will be with us in a second. He'll be telling his reflections and indeed his family connections to this very special anniversary today. Stay with us.
Ricky Jones has been found not guilty of encouraging violent disorder. I'm gobsmacked.
I just think it'll tell a lot of people that that there is two-tier justice, that people get treated differently, and it will just not. I just think it will damage even further the confidence that people have in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I just think that people will be listening to this and watching and thinking about the whole two-tier dynamic, which of course has been more and more accentuated, I think, over the last 12 months.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, today, in fact yesterday, the Prime Minister Keir Starmer hosted many veterans in the Downing Street Garden. I've been there myself. It's a really beautiful place, and of course Downing Street belongs to us all. It belongs to the nation, and it belongs to the brave men and women who serve our country every day, and indeed those who have served it in the past. The 80th anniversary of VJ Day today. We're going to talk about that in a second, but let's see what the Prime Minister said in his address to those assembled in the Downing Street Garden yesterday.
And it is the opportunity to pay our respects to the many people who fought, who were captured, and of course who made the ultimate sacrifice in the Far East. And we do pay our respects here this afternoon, as we do so often. And it's a reminder that in the Cabinet Room, that's the room just up here, those 2 or 3 windows, and these doors are the doors to the Cabinet Room. That has been the Cabinet Room for decades and decades and decades. And it was in that room, in that Cabinet Room, just a few yards from us, that the new Prime Minister then, as it was, Clement Attlee, just been elected into office at the end of the Second World War, received the news of Japan's surrender. And it was in there that that news was broken, and the nation begun to understand that now it really was the end of World War II.
Keir Starmer talking to veterans yesterday. Well, one veteran of service not in Japan but elsewhere is Anthony Metcalfe, a spokesman for the Royal British Legion. Anthony, you of course have served this country with great bravery and distinction yourself, but you have a long family history. Tell us about the photograph you keep in the pocket of your uniform and why.
Yes, thank you for that. I mean, you can say I come from a sort of intergenerational family that served across the many wars. My father, who I sadly never really knew, he died when I was only 4 years old. I was very, very young. Was in the Royal Marine Engineers in the Second World War in the Far East, and he was called up in spring 1941 and finally came home from that Far East campaign in about spring 1946, actually. So he was away for a very, very long time, and it's been a very emotional day here today for all of us. But also, I've had that sort of personal reflection in what has been a very, very good and very reflective day, looking back at VJ80.
Just talk me through the day and what you and your colleagues at the Royal British Legion have been doing, Anthony.
Yeah, I mean, we've been really privileged and really proud to put the 33 veterans that have been here today at the heart of everything that we have been doing. They've been able to share their stories, their experiences. They've been treated like royalty, of course, and they've been able to have been very much looked after and loved today. And it's really important that we value their service and their sacrifice 80 years ago, and we recognise the huge contribution that they all did in the Far East and all that served in the Second World War in defeating fascism.
Certainly, and tell us some of the stories you've been hearing today from those 33 veterans. They're, of course, quite a fair age, given that this happened 80 years ago.
Oh, yes, and they're absolutely amazing bunch of individuals. I mean, the youngest one we had today, I think I remember rightly, was 96, and we had two 105-year-olds. So we had quite a bit of recorded discussions about their experiences of serving both in the Army, the Navy, in the Air Force and in the Merchant Navy. And of course, we must never forget that lots of individuals, particularly children and family members, were also interned by the Japanese in the Second World War. And we heard some really moving testament from some two young ladies who were only 8 or 9 years old and spent some horrific experiences in Japanese prisons of war camp. So it's been a very emotional day, and I'm not afraid to admit I had grit in my eyes at a number of occasions.
I totally understand that. I wonder, as we remember Japan, is it, I mean, there's so many people who will focus on the Nazis in Europe, as they should, of course, when we remember and learn the lessons from the Second World War. The Japanese element of it was at least as important, but nonetheless perhaps less well known. What can we do as a society to make sure that we put the two on an equal footing, do you think?
And I think that's why the Legion's put so much time, effort, resources into making sure that today's VJ80 commemorations can sit alongside the excellent VE80 celebrations back in May, for example. But you're right. A lot of them talk about the fact that they feel some regards, overlooked and forgotten. And I think that's probably down to the fact that that campaign took place at the other side of the world. There wasn't easy communications. And actually, it took a long time for these individuals to come home. And by the time they came home in spring or summer 1946, the Second World War was over. And I think most of them just wanted to put the past into the past and look into the future and to move on. But as that generation starts to fade from living memory, it's really important that we recognise them and put a sort of, parity of esteem across all those that fought in the Second World War. And I think also some element is down to the fact that that campaign was also far more diverse in its nature. Massive Indian Army contribution, African battalions and regiments from all across East Africa, for example. So maybe those coming home were slightly more diluted than those that came home from the battlefields in Europe, for example.
In terms of the stories you've heard today, what will stay with you as time goes on? What are the stories and the examples of the service and the real difficulty, the trial and the grit and determination that our soldiers went through? What will stay with you? Just give us some examples of what you've heard today.
I think what was really moving was hearing from the young girl who was in a Japanese internment camp and the horrible conditions that she was living through. The fact that she craved for just a simple piece of bread with a little bit of jam on every single day, and she said that to her parents, "Can I have some jam? Can I have some jam, please?" And they have to say to her, "Sorry, there's nothing more left." And they resorted to sort of eating snails and other sort of insects to keep themselves going. And then, of course, hearing from the brave troops fighting across Burma, for example, just the horrendous conditions, the ongoing, the rain all the time, the fact that disease caused far more casualties and far more deaths than the Japanese ever did. It was just such a hellish place to fight in, I think.
You yourself served this country in Kosovo and in Afghanistan. There are so many lessons, of course, that can be learned, not just for the public, but for serving soldiers and officers today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that around is about sharing experiences. And of course, if you are impacted by the places that you've gone to and served in, don't be afraid to ask out and reach out to organisations like the Royal British Legion for support and help. Because at the core, alongside keeping remembrance alive, we're the biggest provider of welfare support across the UK, and we're here 365 days a year, 24 hours a day to keep people going and support people. So if you need help, reach out to us.
And with those welfare services, obviously there are many younger people, but for the 33 veterans that you're hearing from today, how are you supporting them still into their perhaps latter years?
We're doing a huge amount of work alongside them. For example, it can be as simple as keeping them mobile and active in their own homes. It's supporting supporting their carers and their families to make sure they understand how to look after them the best possible way. And the Legion also runs a whole network of care homes, for example, looking after more elderly veterans. So we'll be there for them as much as is required and needed.
Anthony, thank you so much for joining me today. That's Anthony Metcalfe, who's a spokesman for the Royal British Legion, a veteran himself. Told a moving story there of his late father Douglas, who was of Burma, Star veteran, who served across the Far East in the Royal Marine Engineers from 1941 to 1946. And he mentioned there how Douglas died when Anthony was very young, but he proudly carries a picture of his father in uniform in his pocket as he attends those VJ Day commemorations today. So of course we remember those veterans who died for our freedom, so that stations like this could exist, that we could have free speech, that we could say things that are not perhaps what the government would want us to say, but we question what they do. We can question juries, we can question legal decisions, we can question what courts do. That is the kind of freedom that we have. And if you want to have that freedom, and if you want to exercise that freedom, you can do so today. The big story we're talking about today is, of course, Councillor Ricky Jones being cleared of his charges. Many people getting in touch. I'll take many more calls, texts, tweets and voice notes on this. And if you want to get in touch about that, or indeed you want to talk about VJ Day, for example, you're more than welcome to do so. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can text me 87222, or even send me a voice note on that main number 0344 499 1000. In the next hour after the 5 o'clock news, we're going to talk about the councillor cleared of encouraging violent behaviour. We'll talk about Trump and Putin, and with Michael Yaki, who's one of my favourite political analysts, and we'll get the latest sports news from the Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun as well. So plenty coming up. Stay with us here on Talk. See you in a second.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, it's just after 5 o'clock. This is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. Councillor Ricky Jones has been cleared in his trial. He was saying that he believed that there should be retribution against people who were protesting last summer. He called them disgusting Nazi fascists. He said we need to get rid of them all, and he made a throat-cutting gesture. But he said these actions were not intended to incite or encourage violence. He has been completely cleared, and he called for far-right protesters' throats to be cut. So that's all right then. Well, actually it's not. So we're going to be talking about that, and let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. Hillary Clinton has just put a post on Twitter saying if Donald Trump negotiates an end to Putin's war on Ukraine without Ukraine having to cede territory, I'll nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize myself. She's a former US Secretary of State, of course, and was Mr. Trump's 2016 Democratic opponent. She added, Trump should know by now that he's not meeting with a friend of the United States today. He's meeting with an adversary who wants America's destruction and the end of the entire Western alliance. We'll discuss her comments and what happens in Alaska later, of course, in a few minutes' time with Michael Yaki, the US political analyst. Always love a yak with Yaki. We'll talk about the sport as well. We've got the Sun deputy sports editor who is going to be joining us, telling us everything that's happening this weekend and reflecting on the day. I want your comments on all of it. 0344 499 1000. Plenty of people getting in touch about Councillor Ricky Jones. Please add your comments on that number. You can use the main number 0344 499 1000 to give me a call, to send me a voice note. Please do that for less than a minute. Send those voice notes in, we'll play them out. You can also send me a WhatsApp text message on that number. Text me, normal text message 87222. Tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. Loads to discuss between now and 7 o'clock when Ian Collins takes over. He is here between 7 and 10, so stay with us here on Talk. Well, I just want to remind you of what Councillor Ricky Jones said and did.
We've got children and women using those trains destroying the summer holidays. They are disgusting, nasty bastards, and we need to cut all their throats and get rid of them all.
We need to cut their throats and get rid of them all. We need to cut their throats and get rid of them all. That is what Ricky Jones said. He has been found not guilty and cleared of charges at Snaresbrook Crown Court. Jay in Wanstead's been in touch and says, great show as always. The jury came back in only 30 minutes and couldn't agree on all 3 counts, so he was found not guilty. The defence claimed Jones was neurodivergent with ADHD and dyspraxia and didn't know what he was saying. However, he drove all the way from Kent, having made aggressive statements on social media days before the protest. I think he knew exactly what he was doing. I think he knew exactly what he was saying. Also, he is a community leader and should know better. Let's talk to Simon Spence, KC. He's a criminal barrister at Red Lion Chambers. Simon, I mean, I know you have prosecuted and I'm sure defended many, many cases, and the jury here has come to a conclusion that many, many of our viewers and listeners think is just totally wrong. What would you say to them?
Well, I think that the first thing we have to bear in mind is that we have a system of trial by jury, and the jury are the only people who sit and listen to all of the evidence, hear the arguments on both sides, and make the decision. And we have to bear in mind that in this country, we have a system where you are innocent until proven guilty, and so the prosecution have to make the jury sure of guilt. And whilst it's very easy to criticise verdicts that perhaps on the face of them seem surprising, we have to respect juries' decisions rather than criticise them. Because at the end of the day...
Why do we have to respect them?
Because that is the system we have. And if you want to change the system, and of course that is currently under review because the government has commissioned a review from Sir Brian Leveson, which is recommending restricting right to jury trial for a lot of offences, then that's a matter for the politicians to decide. But when you repeatedly survey the general British public, the two things that they say are most important in public life is free access to the national health system and trial by jury. And if they're the two cornerstones that the public feel are central to our way of life, and bear in mind, we've had trial by jury in one form or another for over 1,000 years, then we have to respect the decisions juries make.
I disagree with you, and I'll tell you why, Simon. Because you can believe a system should exist, as I do. I believe trial by jury is a perfectly reasonable system and should continue to exist. But I can also disagree with the verdicts, and I can say that the jury's wrong. I don't see those two positions as contradictory. Do you?
Well, they're not necessarily, but of course you didn't sit through all of the evidence. You didn't hear the legal arguments from the barristers. You didn't hear the summing up from the judge. All you know about the case as much as I do, which is the rather graphic part that you just played, and the decision of the jury. We don't know what was discussed in the jury room. Clearly, they came back very quickly, but it doesn't strike me necessarily as being a political verdict, which is how some people, James Cleverly, for example, have been portraying it. I think it's highly unlikely that it would have been a jury of entirely Labour voters, for example.
And Chris Philp,
I don't know.
Yeah, and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, he's a colleague, of course, of Sir James Cleverly, said it is astonishing that this Labour councillor who was caught on video calling for throats to be slit is let off scot-free, whereas Lucy Connolly got 31 months in prison for posting something no worse. The development of two-tier justice is becoming increasingly alarming. It cannot have been a question of uncertain evidence, as the man was on video, clearly calling for violence. The government must come forward with plans to ensure justice is handed out equally, regardless of the background or views of the perpetrator. But as far as I can see, this Labour government seems to be quite happy with two-tier justice. That is what Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has said. Do you think he was wise to say that and to put that in the public domain, Simon?
Well, the important thing to bear in mind, of course, Lucy Connolly pleaded guilty. So she accepted that what she said was unlawful. This Labour councillor clearly, although it was very inappropriate to say it, was arguing that what he said was not unlawful. That's his right. If he'd been convicted, then he'd have been sentenced appropriately and would have received a much stiffer sentence than Lucy Connolly did, because he'd have been convicted after a jury trial rather than pleading guilty. Politicians are very keen to trot out this phrase two-tier justice. I have to say, I, as a lawyer, simply do not know what it means.
I'll tell you what it means, Simon, and you're a much more learned person than I am. You're a King's Counsel. What it means is a perception, anyway, of the fact that the law is not applied equally. And I'll tell you why. Because Lucy Connolly, for example, yes, she pleaded guilty and everything you say is absolutely factually correct. But she was tried very, very quickly. This took nearly a year. The context has changed. The atmosphere has changed. The political atmosphere, the legal atmosphere has changed within a year. We're also in a situation where things are so blatantly done, such as calling for people's throats to be slit, and indeed someone who, about a month ago, more than a month ago actually, on the stage in Glastonbury, for example, chanted death, death to the IDF, and even in Somerset Police still haven't charged, or indeed, as far as we know, interviewed that person. That is two-tier justice. That is what people see, politically or otherwise, that there are certain things that certain people with certain political persuasions do that are clamped down upon very quickly, and justice is swift and, many would argue, brutal, and then other things that people do from another political persuasion that are simply not dealt with nearly as harshly. That is what people see as two-tier justice.
Well, the actual answer to that is that people who plead guilty are dealt with quickly because that's what the courts arrange to do. I'm afraid the reason why cases take so long to come to trial as opposed to guilty pleas is because of the chronic underinvestment in the criminal justice system by successive governments over the last 20 years. I read only this morning about a case where somebody was arrested in 2023 and their trial is due to take place in 2029. That's a 6-year wait.
Yeah, that's absurd. Yeah.
Precisely. And it's not just the defendant. I don't know what the nature of the offence is, but there will presumably be a victim. And I think what we need to be focusing on is repairing the damage that consecutive governments have done to the criminal justice system, rather than talking about something called two-tier justice. As I say, Lucy Connolly was dealt with quickly because she pleaded guilty. The many people who do plead guilty are dealt with very quickly. I know that from my own experience.
Similarly, when there's video evidence, in this case, for example, I'm not holding you personally responsible for the entire criminal justice system, Simon. I wouldn't do that. But the instance, as I quoted there, about death to the IDF, about, for example, NECAP, this horrible group of people who call themselves musicians from my part of the world, saying kill your local MP, no further action taken. There will be people who will very reasonably say, were that about any other group, were that people coming from a different political persuasion, that would have been clamped down upon. And again, I'm not holding you responsible for it, but it's the perception that people have. There are just too many examples of this.
I understand the perception. From my experience, and I can speak about it firsthand, having worked in the criminal justice system for 40 years, I don't see any political bias by either the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, or by juries. So that is my perception, based on a position of knowledge. And of course, when there are political aspects to the prosecution, of course, people are going to take sides depending on what their political persuasion is. There was an awful lot of talk from Reform UK in particular about the Manchester airport assaults and the failure to prosecute there. But of course, there was a prosecution. But if the police are investigating
and there's now to be a retrial as well on the other accounts that weren't. Yes,
absolutely. And I think we spoke about that only a few weeks ago.
That's right.
But I think people perhaps don't fully understand, particularly with offences where there is a political sensitivity to it, the degree of care that has to be taken by the police in the investigation. And of course, the police are as badly under-resourced as the rest of the criminal justice system. And so with their work, they have to prioritise the cases that are being dealt with. And so it's more about funding the system, actually, than any political agenda that any political party may have in trying to influence the criminal justice system. And the fact that our current Prime Minister is an ex-barrister, I don't think actually has any bearing on what's happening at the moment at all. He's very much distanced himself from his
it certainly had a bearing last summer, Simon. It certainly had a bearing last summer when he knew how the system worked, and he called for the Crown Prosecution Service to act and the police to act very swiftly to bring people to justice. He prioritised that aspect of things, and that was done with people like Lucy Connolly and others who were breaking the law, and she admitted that she broke the law. And I'm not saying for a second that her tweet was okay. It wasn't. I don't condone it for a second. Whereas with Ricky Jones, okay, he pleaded not guilty and it took longer, but that took a much longer period of time. And whilst there may be very good reasons for that, some of which you've outlined in the last few minutes, there will be many people who see that those cases were not dealt with. They're different cases and they're different things that they're accused of, but they're nonetheless were around the same time when the Prime Minister said, let's do this quickly. This was not done quickly in regard to Ricky Jones, and I believe that's a mistake.
Well, in fact, compared to many cases, it was done very quickly. I repeat the example I gave earlier,
Sure.
6-year wait.
Yeah.
So his case actually has been heard sooner than many.
Okay.
And if Keir Starmer does want to seriously bring about improvement in the criminal justice system, he and his colleagues in government need to find the money to invest in it, I'm afraid. It's as simple as that.
Simon, thank you. Simon Spence there, who is a KC, King's Counsel, is a criminal barrister at Red Lion Chambers. Paul says Simon Spencer is wrong. The video was all the proof that was needed. Chris says, sorry, Peter, our justice system is broken. Your barrister says it all. The evidence was proven and on camera. Another person says, so it's okay to call for death to the IDF and ask your audience to kill your local MP. It's even okay to call people you believe to be far-right Nazi scum and ask for their throats to be slit. But if you tweet something about illegal immigrants, take it down and admit you were wrong and apologise, you get prison for 31 months. Yep, that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And that is, in a tweet, that is two-tier justice. Dale is in Somerset and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Dale, what do you make of this?
Hi there.
Hi.
Love your programme.
Thank you.
I'm just gobsmacked at what he just said, to be quite honest. It was so lawyer-like, you know.
I mean, he is a lawyer.
Yeah, but the thing is, sometimes you just got to use a little bit of common sense. You know, common sense comes into it as well.
It does. It exactly does, Dale. And my point with all of that would be, I mean, you know, Simon Spence and I have just disagreed agreeably there. But my point is, a lot of it is about perception and indeed trust in the system. And if people don't trust the system, and in this case, I don't trust the system, and I've just seen many examples, some of which I cited to Simon there, that make people not trust the system because they don't see the law being applied equally and fairly.
But the thing is, what did he say at the end of it? It's all down to money. Everybody wants money. And it's just wrong. It should be down to principles, to what you believe in. You know, but you know, this immigration is bad. That doesn't mean I'm racist. I don't, you know, I understand why they come across, wouldn't you?
It's fairness as well. It's
I'm not trying to be, but you've got to be sensible as well. We can't take everybody in the world in this country. We're a very small island, a very big world. We can't do it.
Yeah.
Simple as that. We can't afford it. We can't. You know, the house is going to be this whole country is going to be a building site. Just one big bunch of houses. You know, it's crazy. It just, what I was going to say was, I'm scared about what's coming. I think as Keir Starmer, there's a storm coming, and he's going to be in big trouble if he keeps going the way he's going. I think personally, I'm not saying I'm enticing it.
No, of course you're not. Of course you're not. Of course you're not. You're simply expressing your opinion, Dale.
Yeah. Being like you said, two-tiered. Yeah. One person gets this, one person gets that. You know. I think there's a storm coming, and he better watch out. He's just throwing his head in the sand, as far as I'm concerned.
Dale, thanks for your opinion there. Let's hear from Steve in London, who's given me a ring as well, 0344 499 1000. You can do that too. Steve, what do you think?
Well, I think what's happened is Keir Starmer said that if you are arrested, that you will be put on remand, you won't be released. So I think Lucy Connolly was, you know, she was told, if you go not guilty, chances are you're going to spend the same amount of time in prison than you do if you get found guilty. Mm-hmm. And just seeing how long it took his case to come to court, that Labour MP, that she was told, either way, you're going to be in jail for a certain amount of time.
You may as well plead guilty and get it over with.
Yeah.
Labour councillor, I should say, but yes.
But he was allowed out. He was allowed out on bail. He got bail, but she didn't. And a lot of other ones didn't either. And I think that's why a lot of people pleaded guilty, because if there's a 6-year wait for a trial jury, she could have been in jail for 6 years. Yeah, so, and I think that's what the problem is there. Yeah,
there are many problems, but that's certainly one of them. Steve, listen, thanks for your thoughts on that. I appreciate that. Colette in Redditch says, I'm disgusted Ricky Jones was cleared. Can you imagine the furore if it was someone like Nigel Farage who had made that comment? Ricky Jones may have been cleared in court, but we've all seen his true colours now, says Colette in Redditch. And listen, it's not often this happens, but I'm going to praise the Labour Party. The next day, they suspended him. They should now expel him. Starmer greeting the veterans while some are sleeping on the streets while immigrants are in 4-star hotels with all the comforts. That is a disgrace, says this person. Mark in Selby says, I would love to have the summing up from the judge in the Jones case made public. It will not, of course, as it will clearly be biased. What chance do the honest British citizens have when everyone in the system is against them? Free Lucy Connolly now, says Mark. Well, I'm sure the judge would deny that his deliberations were biased, but Mark, that is your opinion and you're entitled to it because we are the home of free speech. Adrian Baird in Buckhurst Hill says, 3 years ago I spent 4 weeks exploring the Thai-Myanmar border. I will always remember arriving one morning at the Kanchanaburi near the end of the Death Railway. I hope that's how you pronounce it. The War Graves Commission deserve praise for the way they maintained the war cemetery there. It's beautiful. But most poignant was walking down the rows of hundreds of graves of brave UK, Australian, New Zealand, Indian and Malay dead and looking at the ages. Every grave but a handful belonged to a very brave soldier aged less than 24. You can only weep at this sight. So yes, 2 minutes silence today was the very least we could do, says Adrian Baird in Buckhurst Hill. Thank you, Adrian, for that reminder of what is important. I've been to some of those Commonwealth war graves. In fact, my own great uncle, I call him my grandfather's brother because I never knew him. Of course, he was shot down. He was an RAF navigator and was shot down in 1944, and he is buried outside Berlin. It was a real privilege about 12 or 13 years ago to go there and to see how well maintained those graves are. It is a beautiful and peaceful place, and the Germans do a fantastic job in keeping those, and the Commonwealth War Graves Commission, I should say, as well, do a really, really excellent work doing that. We're going to talk in just a second to Michael Yaki about Trump. We have this fascinating tweet from Hillary Clinton as well. I will ask Michael his thoughts on that. Lots to come and lots of coverage during Ian Collins' programme as well. He's going to be here between 7 and 10 this evening, looking forward and indeed covering the meeting of Trump and Putin in Alaska. Stay with us.
I think this is so damaging to the government that keeps on trying to pretend to be confused at the suggestion that there is such a thing as two-tier justice in our country. And did you notice in the footage that we played just now of that deplorable individual making those comments, and there were a load of people around him clapping and cheering at those comments? It wasn't like everyone went quiet and looked shocked. You know, this was just sort of like, yeah, let's bring it on, folks. Let's talk about slitting throats.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, it's the morning in Alaska. It's 26 minutes past 8 there, and the US President will be there very, very shortly. Lots of Russians there already. And let's just remind ourselves of what Donald Trump said on Air Force One just before flying to Alaska.
But look, he's a smart guy, been doing it for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are, we're president. That was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, you know, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia. And that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled.
President Putin has also been talking. This is what he said yesterday about peace in Ukraine.
Которая, как всем хорошо известно, предпринимает
And secondly, I will tell you about the stage we are at with the current American administration, which, as everyone knows, is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict, in order to create long-term conditions for peace, both between our countries and in Europe, and in the world as a whole. If, at the next stage, we reach agreements in the area of control over strategic offensive weapons.
President Putin there. We obviously heard the words of a translator. Well, Michael Yaki is with me. He is a US political analyst and former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. Michael, this is big stuff. What do you think is going to be the outcome?
Well, I think that we can be pretty sure that they're not going to give Alaska back to the Russians. I think that's the only thing that's sure about what's going on here. I mean, this is, the stakes are really high for the people of Ukraine. The stakes are really high for Europe. The stakes are a little different for Donald Trump because he's, as his press secretary has been saying for the past 3 to 4 weeks, this is about the Nobel Peace Prize, which is if that's the incentive that it takes to get someone to try and do something to get Putin to stop killing people, I think everyone here will take it.
Yes, fair enough. It's interesting that Hillary Clinton, the former US Secretary of State and Mr. Trump's 2016 Democratic opponent, has said if Donald Trump negotiates an end to Putin's war on Ukraine without Ukraine having to cede territory, I'll nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize myself. How likely is it, do you think, that will happen?
Well, there's sort of two conditions there. One is an end to the war, but two, not cede any territory. And I think that the latter is going to be really hard to get through. I mean, I think that you see even with Zelensky, there's a realization that there's going to be some areas of Ukraine that maybe, do they decide that, okay, Crimea, even though Russia's technically had it, but Ukraine has never recognized it, will they recognize Crimea? That might be something that they might be willing to give away. But the Donbas, that whole area, the towns and infrastructure in there, Zelensky doesn't want to give that up. And, this is all about, you hear Trump talking about he wants the second meeting. Mm-hmm. And the question is, A, is there going to be a second meeting? And B, is it going to be just show? Yeah. Or is it going to be something really productive?
And it was really interesting, he said yesterday as well that when he was at the Kennedy Center, that he was hoping that perhaps European leaders might be there too. So clearly he wants to bring them together. I just wonder at what stage he says, actually, I've tried my best and this isn't going to work.
Well, you could almost say that we were at that stage 6 months ago.
Sure.
The question really is, and I can't speak for the U.S. government, but if the president were to put back on the table that if they can't reach some kind of agreement, arms shipments from the U.S. are going to start again. And right now, the president was saying at this press conference yesterday, well, the EU and NATO is buying weapons from us. We're not sending them in anything. If the U.S. said, well, as a matter of fact, we're going to start shipping stuff over, mm-hmm. Those are the things that Putin doesn't like. Those are the weapons that he's very worried about, the long range, very high-tech missiles that we have. Those are things that could bring him to the bargaining table. But if the president isn't willing to put them on there, I think that Putin is looking at this as, well, we do this, we get nowhere. By the spring offensive next year, I'll have even more territory, and then Ukraine's bargaining position will be even weaker. And I think that's what's underlying all of this.
How important is this for Trump domestically?
I think there are a lot of foreign policy is one of those issues that captures the attention of the American people, but never really sticks. I think that the best way to look at it is George Bush. The first George Bush wins the Gulf War in record fashion. He has a 91% approval rating. 18 months later, he loses to Bill Clinton.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very interesting point there. And I just wonder, the second point of what Hillary Clinton has said, Trump should know by now that he's not meeting with a friend of the United States today. He's meeting an adversary who wants America's destruction and the end of the entire Western alliance. I think we know that. I think we're sort of fairly aware of that. I just wonder whether, the clear implication is that Trump is naive here, that he is not going into this either as someone who's fully informed or as other opponents of his have said, as an honest broker in this. How do you see it, Michael?
Well, I'm not sure that he's naive. He does a lot of things consciously in a way that is designed to throw people off balance. It's unfortunately one of his greatest assets is the unpredictability. Foreign policy needs predictability. The relations between nations needs predictability. That's why the tariffs have thrown, the UK and the EU into a tizzy when they were first announced, because it changes the way you look at the world. Trump doesn't look at the world that way. And the question is, what worldview does he bring in to the meeting with Putin? Is it, well, I have to stop the war, I have to save lives, and I'll do whatever I can to make that happen? That may not be good news for Ukraine, because he could say, well, you have to give up all this in order for this to stop. Or is it, I know this is a bad guy, everyone's told me he's a bad guy, everyone thinks I'm going to go in there and give away the store, and I'm not. You just don't know which Trump you're going to see. Is it going to be the Trump that was in the White House with Zelensky berating him, or the one who was sitting with him in the Sistine Chapel, conferring and learning and getting some enlightenment about what terrible things are going on? But the fact is, Russia has the advantage right now. Before a year ago, year and a half ago, it was a different situation. Ukraine was really taking it to the Russians, but the Russians have put in full war production. They have a wartime economy. They look at it as, it's a very Stalin-esque way of looking at war, which is, I don't care how many people I sacrifice, I don't care how many weapons I have to build, just the sheer numbers are going to win this. And right now, that's in his favor.
What do you make of the point, just finally, that so many businessmen are coming, so many business figures have been brought over to Alaska with Putin? That sends a very strong signal to someone who wrote a book called The Art of the Deal.
Yeah, I think that they're trying to see if they can figure out a way to expand the relations between to sort of put Ukraine to the side, but think about the economic issues.
And the Kremlin have said this afternoon, for example, that they want to talk about the totality of Russian-US relations, not just Ukraine.
I think it was a good strategic move for the president to say, we're not going to do business, but are they going to talk business? Are they going to talk about a framework? Again, Putin's economy is not in great shape, but then again, it's not in great shape, but it's in just okay enough shape that he can take this war another year and really take it to Ukraine. And that's the concern. Time is on his side. It's not on the Ukraine side, unless the United States says, we're getting back into this.
As always, Michael, great to talk to you. Michael Yaki there, US political analyst and former senior advisor to Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi. What do you make of what Michael was saying there? What are your hopes for this Alaska conference? 0344 499 1000. We'll talk in just a second about a Labour council. This is Birmingham, who wants to remove dangerous British flags from city streets. How dangerous is the British flag? These ones have stayed up quite well behind me today. They haven't fallen down, they haven't injured me. I've so far been unscathed. We'll talk more about that in just a second here on Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sean in Bridlington has been back in touch. He says the scumbags who pulled the statue into Bristol Harbour were let off by the jury. Same with many climate nutters. Only lefties and foreigners get off in UK courts, says Sean. Dave in Bristol says of the all the money in the world will not make the lawyer who wrongly advised Lucy Connolly, either under instruction or through incompetence, to plead guilty. He can waffle all he likes, but the principle of fair and equal application of the law and justice is down to those involved in it, their ideology and the way they carry out their duties, says Dave in Bristol. Thank you for that. Rob said Starmer had the courts open 24/7 last year, but now this councillor took a year to come to trial. Court sit for 6 hours a day. Maybe if they did a full day, maybe we'd get more cases done. Marcus says, I'm devastated how this country is going the two-tier route. It's shocking and upsetting and keeps getting worse and worse. I honestly can't believe the hypocrisy of this once great nation, says Marcus from Exeter. He also says, great show. Thank you, Marcus. Putin should be arrested by the US as soon as he lands and taken to The Hague, says Glyn. Another person, Rob in Burnley, says, evening, Peter. I don't agree with the verdict, but for the sake of our system, I think we have to accept it. However, there's two-tier justice in the way Lucy Connolly was dealt with, i.e. the threat of a long wait in remand. Had she been able to go before a jury, I'd imagine the case would be thrown out just as quickly. I mean, in fairness, she did plead guilty, rightly or wrongly. You know, she shouldn't have done that. I imagine she thinks she was badly advised. I imagine we will talk to her at some stage on this station when she is released. She'll be out soon, says Leslie. Hopefully the treatment of her and her case will reveal a lot. I hope she makes a lot of money from the media, says Leslie. Right then, I want to talk about more nonsense, this time from Birmingham City Council, that of course lit up its council buildings, despite the fact they're bankrupt, to celebrate Pakistani Independence Day. They're also saying that it's dangerous to have British flags flying. They could fall and hit someone, and that they should be removed from lampposts. There are many of them that were put up in recent weeks. Of course, there are loads of Palestinian flags. Has the council wanted to get rid of those? Of course it hasn't. So residents in Birmingham who have installed hundreds of Union and St George's flags in the past fortnight's patriotic outpouring. On Tuesday, the council announced plans to remove the flags, claiming they put the lives of pedestrians and motorists at risk, despite being 25 feet off the ground. Placing unauthorised attachments on street furniture, particularly tall structures like lampposts, can be dangerous. Critics pointed out the Palestinian flags have flown elsewhere in the city, where 29.9% of residents are Muslim, since the war in Gaza began in 2023. Well, we have, if you can see them, if you're watching on the screen, you can see the two Union flags behind me. They haven't so far fallen and injured me. They're a lot lower down than 25 feet up. Andrew Allison is head of campaigns at the Popular Conservatism, the Popcons. Andrew, this is just nonsense, isn't it?
Oh, it's complete and utter nonsense. They always use health and safety, don't they, councils? Have you noticed this, Peter? There's always some sort of health and safety problem. But yeah, as you said, they could raise the Pakistani flag for the Pakistan's National Day. And I was thinking at the time, well, what about the Indians? They weren't particularly like that. But hey, presto, the library was had the Indian flag projected onto it. You know, what they're going to do next? I mean, if Jamaica's national holiday, are they going to do something there? You know, 30th of November, Barbados became a republic. I mean,
there's sort of a day for everything these days, and you can light up these buildings, you can fly flags and all the rest of it.
But the thing is, Peter, this is a council. This is not the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. This is the council. And it should not be celebrating national days of other countries.
It's
simple as that.
Completely correct. And I mean, there may be many residents in the city who want them to do that, though, but they are bankrupt. They don't have enough money, and they shouldn't be spending money on this. Also, taking flags down costs a lot of money as well. You need operatives to do that. I would argue strongly that that is just not, or should not be, a priority for Birmingham City Council.
No, it shouldn't be a priority at all. I think the only type of population that the councillors in Birmingham are popular with is the rat population, which seems to be ever growing both in number and in size. And of course, you know in German what a town hall is, don't you?
I don't. Rathaus. Rathaus, yes. My favourite one, though, is Lord Mayor in German, which is Oberbürgermeister.
Yeah, that's a very good one. But I think there's also an issue here. Whether this is right or wrong, I don't know. But the impression just comes across that basically anything to do with Britain, anything to do with flying the Union flag or the flag of St. George is bad. But we can do whatever we like for other cultures. And indeed, we talked about this a few weeks ago, if you remember the school in Rugby that initially banned an English girl from speaking about Britain.
Yeah, indeed, and wearing a Union Jack dress as well. This seems pretty two-tier as well, and the leader of the Conservative opposition in Birmingham, Councillor Robert Alden, says our national flags are nothing to be ashamed of. Seeing our flags flying gives us all pride in our shared history and achievements as a great nation. Birmingham City Council should be proud to fly them across the city. Labour rushing to rip them down is shameful. I mean, we contrast this with... Look, I've seen flags used as a weapon and to, mark out territory in Northern Ireland on many, many different occasions. But I like to think more positively of the American example of people, there are rules about lighting up your flag. It has to be taken down at night and so on. It's really a symbol of pride for the Americans. I just wonder if we can get maybe a bit of that back in this country.
I hope so. And I'm pleased that you mentioned America. So you lived in America for a while.
I did, yeah, a couple of years.
I visited a few times, and there's one image that came to mind. It was I was driving along in Indiana in the middle of nowhere, and there was a Taco Bell, as you get in America. And I stopped off to get some lunch. And in the middle of nowhere, on the roof of this Taco Bell, there were 6 flags. There were 4 stars and stripes and 2 Indiana state flags. And it's just stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go in America, they fly the flag, don't they? Be it their national flag, be it a state flag, or maybe even the city flag.
Yeah.
But they do it with pride. And I can't imagine on American radio or television there are conversations like this going on about a council telling people to bring down flags.
It's a very, very good point, Andrew. Thank you. Andrew Ellison there, Head of Campaigns at Popular Conservatism. Tarquin's in London and has some thoughts about Councillor Ricky Jones. Tarquin, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say? Tarquin, are you there?
I wish I was in Carrickfergus. Oh, am I on?
You are on, yes. I mean, it's always good to sing "I Wish I Was in Carrickfergus." Sadly, you're not Phil. You're not Phil Coulter, Tarquin. But
I would swim over the deepest ocean.
Okay, let's perhaps, Tarquin, come back to the subject at hand here. Tarquin, are you going to tell me what you rang in to tell us about?
You've nailed it, sir. You nailed it when you pointed out, I think earlier in the time, because initially I was phoning in to say that I think that Lucy Connolly had really, really bad advice from the CPS. And I think it's beyond that, because I think you mentioned it. This sword of Damocles of being on remand until I think that is not British justice. The trial by jury bit, yes, check that box, tick that box, but you can't threaten someone, you'll be on remand for months, maybe years. That's bull. BS that.
Yeah, well, listen, I think you make some good points there, Tarquin, and I think there are a lot of people who will agree with you. And there are so many issues in regard to Lucy Connolly, especially when you contrast it with what has happened to Councillor Ricky Jones, who walks free today. If you have more thoughts on what Tarquin had to say, perhaps not on the singing, let me know. 0344 499 1000. We'll get the sport next with the Deputy Head of Sport from The Sun. Dean Scoggins is going to be with us in just a second. Stay with us here on Talk.
think this is so damaging to the government that keeps on trying to pretend to be confused at the suggestion that there is such a thing as two-tier justice in our country. And did you notice in the footage that we played just now of that deplorable individual making those comments, and there were a load of people around him clapping and cheering at those comments? It wasn't like everyone went quiet and looked shocked. You know, this was just sort of like, yeah, let's bring it on, folks. Let's talk about slitting throats.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, there's plenty to talk about in the sport now.
Sports news from The Sun.
And joining us is the Deputy Head of Sport for The Sun, Dean Scoggins. Dean, great to have you in the studio. How are you doing?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, busy days. We go back to the Prem.
Of course, the return tonight, but for Liverpool, it's the first time they play without Diogo Jota, who sadly lost his life this summer. What about the tributes ahead of their match against Bournemouth?
Yeah, that's the only place to start, really, because obviously tragic car accident and losing his life. We are led to believe that his family will be there, his wife and his children tonight, obviously as guests at Liverpool. Also that Liverpool plan an amazing tribute with like a tifo in the Kop end, and there'll be, you know, wreaths laid. So it'll be a heavily emotionally charged night, definitely at Anfield to start things off. But obviously Liverpool wanting to get it off for Jota as well to a winning start, but they're defending their Premier League title. They have spent an absolute fortune, over 300 million quid already. So you know, once they get the most important thing as the tribute for Jota out of that way, then back to the football. They need to get off to a winning start.
In other Premier League news, Newcastle are not going to have Alexander Isak in their team this weekend. What's the latest in the transfer saga there?
Yeah, so he's on strike now, officially on strike, I think it's fair to say. So this saga's gone on most of the summer. Newcastle want £150 million, which would be by a stretch the British transfer record. Liverpool as yet aren't willing to meet that fee, but Isak has now said he doesn't want to play. He's not going to play. He wants to leave. Liverpool being his preferred destination. Arsenal were interested in him earlier in the window, but now it's down to finding a player wages. So 130 to 150-ish thousand pounds a week fine if you don't play. So Newcastle are digging their heels in and saying you're fine. He's digging his heels in saying he's not playing. He's training alone. We're led to believe he's also moved out of his house in the northeast as well. So yeah, this one's going to run over the next week, and I think obviously once Liverpool get tonight done and dusted, the next thing will be, are they going to sign Isak before the window slams shut, because it always slams shut, it never quietly closes, on September the 1st. So that one's going to run a bit longer, I think.
And more to that saga, I'm sure. Meanwhile, the Sun Sport columnist Troy Deeney has given his say on Arsenal's flagship signing, Victor Gyökeres. What does he think?
Yeah, so Gyökeres being
sorry, apologies.
No, it's not an easy one. I'm doing my show as well. I've had to make sure I brush up on the pronunciation.
I even wrote it down phonetically, and it all went horribly wrong there. Apologies.
No. It's so Arsenal have paid 65 to 68 million pounds for the striker. That was another long, drawn-out sort of transfer saga, and now they've got to a point he's going to play Sunday, at Old Trafford. But Troy Deeney, our star columnist, he's not quite having him yet. So he scored stacks of goals in Portugal. He didn't quite come off when he played for Coventry and Brighton before, but now his numbers in Europe last year were frightening. So, but Troy, I won't totally spoil his whole column. That's there for readers to read. But Troy's gone in pretty hard on. Troy said he does say, Troy, I hope I'm wrong, but I think anybody apart from the Arsenal fans don't hope he's wrong. I think Troy says he's not quite convinced about him yet.
Yeah, just a reminder that over on Sunsport's YouTube page you can watch the latest episode of Tactics Exposed. We can take a look at a preview now where Manchester United versus Arsenal is discussed.
Who will have a bigger impact? Benjamin Sesko at Manchester United or Victor Gyökeres at Arsenal?
Impact-wise, it's very difficult to talk about Benjamin Sesko too much. They are going beyond Gyökeres, okay, and bursting into these channels in here.
Of course, you can get tactics exposed on the Sunsports YouTube page. At Chelsea, the manager wants a centre-back. Are they going to get one?
It doesn't sound that way, yeah. Enzo Maresca's is very uptight about it today in his press conference, and they've spent a lot of money as well, 300 million odd pounds, but they spent it mainly on attacking players and wingers. And then unfortunately, Levi Colwill, the England centre-back, has injured his ACL, so last week out for the season. So Chelsea now look a little bit light at centre-back, but Enzo Maresca was very open, sort of, not criticism directly of the board today, but very unlike Premier League managers to come out and say, well, I want this, but the board don't agree with me, and those above me don't agree with me. So he's not entirely happy, and alongside Arsenal, and depending if Manchester City can get back there, Chelsea are the ones that lots of people are predicting will go toe-to-toe with Liverpool this year, but perhaps not if they don't sign a centre-back. So yeah, Enzo Maresca was pretty hard today that that's not going to happen, but there's still some time to run in this window yet.
Dean, thanks for joining us. That's Dean Scoggins there. He's Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun. Thank you for joining us in the studio. Lots of people getting in touch about Ricky Jones, Councillor Ricky Jones, and this acquittal, essentially cleared of all charges. He has been saying on various occasions, well, on this particular occasion, certainly, that people's throats should be slit, and that is something that many people are very annoyed about because he has been cleared of that. Well, Ian in London's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Ian, what do you make of this?
Well, hold on 1 second, Peter. I always do this. I think it's an absolute joke. When going on to Lucy Caldwell, Connolly,
yeah,
right? She was up in court within 2 weeks or so, right? No real sort of time to get a barrister, so one was appointed to her and everything else. Because any barrister with his or King's Counsel would have said to her, don't plead guilty, let's wait it out and think about this. Here, they've had a year to get the action against Ricky Jones, right? Ricky Collins.
Ricky Jones is his name, yeah.
Yeah, Ricky Jones, right? In the crowd, as Isabel said earlier on, they're all cheering him on. They're all agreeing with it. There's flags for every other nation apart from this council. You can see it now, like, as I'm seeing it, in the background for Palestine. So he's actually going against everything that is sort of going on at the moment. You'll have all these new marches where, quite simply, they'll go up to the police, they'll do anything they want and put their fingers against their throat and say, you can't touch me, because he got away with it.
Yeah.
Right? And it also goes, you know, even with the jury, or like, even as I said to your colleague before, I would love to know what the difference was on the actual charge that was brought up against him, how it actually read. If it was put, you know, as they always say with a judge, you've got to be 100% certain this is what he did.
Yeah.
Right? And if you've always got to play for the audience. Do you know what I mean? Everybody plays to the audience. If you're having to sort of say, oh, as a little boy, I went to school and I played in my underpants, there's got to be, you're going for the sympathy vote.
Yeah, and there are lots of bits of mitigation in terms of him allegedly having autism and ADHD and all the rest of it.
That's right, and that's come after having a year to prepare. Right? It's not. This was not done 2 days after the event. There's been a year to sort of get this sorted out. It's like even with the guys up in Manchester, they're supposed to be found guilty. No.
Well, there is a retrial in terms of Manchester. So just be kind of careful about what we say, that we don't want to prejudice that, Ian. But listen, thanks for your comments. I really appreciate them, and I think a lot of people will agree with them. Mark in Lincolnshire has given me a ring as well on 0344 499 1000. Mark, what do you make of all of this?
Hi, Peter.
Hi there, Mark.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm going to go against the grain, I suppose, here. I'm getting really angry with people that I'm seeing and what I'm hearing and what have you. It's two-tiered nonsense. Now,
why is it nonsense, Mark?
I agree that there's two-tier justice. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. Lucy Connolly was badly done by. I 100% agree with that. She shouldn't have got 3 years. But equally, she was, you know, she received poor legal counsel. she should never have pleaded guilty, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen this with multiple, cases of people that made tweets around that time that pled not guilty and walked free. Funny enough, from a jury trial. But nobody was calling that two-tier justice, were they, Peter?
It's a fair point.
That was fine justice.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's very, very dangerous when we start saying that all this two-tier stuff is now reaching into literally every heart of the, every facet of the justice system. In other words, the jury system. Now,
the jury system's not flawless, though, Mark.
It isn't. Of course, it isn't flawless. There are always going to be instances of, political bias within a jury and all the rest of it. That's always going to exist. But
if you were on a jury, Mark, if you were on a jury and you saw that evidence, I mean, I would very, very easily say this is so clear this guy's a wrong-un, he shouldn't have done this and we should convict him. And I can't understand why anybody wouldn't do that, given the very, very clear evidence. Yeah, we didn't hear every single word of the evidence, the mitigation and all the rest of it, but it's so clear, it's so straightforward, it's on tape.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. If I'd have been sat in that jury, I'd have been looking to convict as well.
Sure.
Because it's blatantly obvious, he's inciting violence. However, I don't know 100% exactly what the jury was advised, what the judges said to them. Again, I come back to the same thing, Peter. Nobody really knows the political leanings of a jury. Nobody knows the ethnic makeup of a jury. Does that have a bearing on it? There's so many things in this that are just, variables that nobody really knows the answer to. And I struggle to find how you come up with a better system in these circumstances, if that makes sense.
Okay, no, it does make sense, Mark. And these are all perfectly legitimate points to make, and thank you for them. Paul, as well, says Ricky Jones didn't plead guilty or diminish responsibility. He pleaded innocent, which means the question in court should have been, did he do it or did he not? And the video shows that he did. Will it be peace at all costs, says Mick? Will Putin and the war criminals, rapists, child kidnappers and evil murderers escape justice? If they do, it will fester and lead to more conflict. Well, both of those issues we're going to continue to discuss between now and 7 o'clock, when Ian Collins is going to be here between 7 and 10 this evening, reflecting on all that is happening in Alaska. We want your thoughts on all of it as well. 0344 499 1000.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good evening, this is Talk Drive. I'm Peter Cardwell. It's just gone 6 o'clock. Thank you so much for your company, whether you're listening at home, whether you're on the move, whether you're one of the car dwellers with us on your car radio. You're very, very welcome to the programme. There's lots to discuss, including Trump saying Putin won't mess around with me as the pair prepare for Ukraine talks in Alaska. That will happen in about 2.5 hours time. We'll also talk about the BBC journalist John Simpson, who's been criticised over debunked data on Gaza journalist deaths, and Angela Rayner ignored complaints about an Islamophobia advisor's anti-Semitic tweets. Really interesting that she thinks that Israel controls America. Not Angela Rayner, but of course this advisor. We'll talk about that. We'll take a look inside the Sun as well with John Lucas, the night news editor, and we will take your calls, text, tweets and voice notes. Loads of people getting in touch about Ricky Jones. This is the Labour councillor, now suspended from Labour, who has been cleared despite what he had said about people's throats being cut. We've got to get them, calling people Nazis and other horrible things. He has been cleared by a court. Lots to discuss on that. Let me know your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. You can text me 87222 with the word talk in your text. You can tweet me at talkTV. Follow me at Peter Cardwell. You can also send me a voice note, less than a minute please. You can send me a WhatsApp text message or give me a ring on the main number 0344 499 1000. Lots to discuss between now and 7 when Ian Collins will be here. He's here between 7 and 10 this evening. So stay with us here on Talk. As I say, Ian will be here between 7 and 10 on the other side of the 7 o'clock news. I'll be back tomorrow as well between 10 and 1 with my Saturday show, and indeed on Sunday as well. So lots to discuss there, including this big story that's going to happen tonight. We'll be reflecting on it tomorrow about Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska. The Russians appear to be there already. It is just gone 9 o'clock in the morning there, and the debate and discussion will happen in about 90 minutes time. Just want to remind ourselves first of what President Trump said before flying to Alaska on Air Force One.
But look, he's a smart guy, been doing it for a long time, but so have I. Been doing it for a long time. And here we are, we're president. That was much more difficult than what I'm doing today, believe me. So we get along. There's a good respect level on both sides. And I think, you know, something's going to come of it. I noticed he's bringing a lot of business people from Russia. And that's good. I like that because they want to do business, but they're not doing business until we get the war settled.
And this is what the Russian President Vladimir Putin said yesterday ahead of those peace talks.
Который, как всем хорошо известно, предпринимает.
And secondly, I will tell you about the stage we are at with the current American administration, which, as everyone knows, is making, in my opinion, quite energetic and sincere efforts to stop the hostilities, stop the crisis and reach agreements that are of interest to all parties involved in this conflict, in order to create long-term conditions for peace, both between our countries and in Europe, and in the world as a whole. If, at the next stage, we reach agreements in the area of control over strategic offensive weapons.
Vladimir Putin there. Well, you've been getting in touch about this. Margaret in Birmingham says, I think President Trump will get a peace deal. I don't think Putin would travel to Alaska for peace talks if he didn't think there might be a solution. Hope if it is an end to the war that Donald Trump gets the Nobel Prize, says Margaret, who also says she hopes that Lucy Connolly joins Reform UK. Thank you to Keith, Keith in Hampshire, who says that megalomaniac Putin just can't be trusted, and I doubt now that he has North Korean cannon fodder to fight this war. I suspect this meeting will be a complete waste of time. So contrasting opinions there. It'll be really interesting to see what comes out of it. We will bring you full coverage right across the evening here on Talk. Ian Collins, as I say, is here between 7 and 10. I'll be back tomorrow morning. Russell Quirk with breakfast between 6 and 10, and I'll be here between 10 and 1 talking about that and many other things as well, but certainly reflecting on what progress, if any, has been made. Well, Maester Gifford is a former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine. Maester, I just wonder, from your perspective, what you hope comes out of this meeting. First of all, do you think it should be happening at all?
Well, it's inevitable that it's happening. It's been more than 50 days since Donald Trump's July deadline, where he wanted, the ball was very much in Putin's court, where he wanted Putin to come to the table. He realized then, as he hopefully realizes now, that Putin has played him for a long time and has tried to drag this war out. And I'm very much hoping that Donald Trump has come to this meeting with some very serious consequences if Putin, once again, is dragging his feet or is going to mess him around. Trump said in the piece that you played earlier that Putin has brought a lot of businessmen with him. My fear is that Russia is simply going to say, let's reset American-Russian relations. Let's start talking about getting rid of some of those sanctions. In other words, they're going to try and give very, very little and try and get as much out of Trump as humanly possible. So I'm not 100% convinced.
Do you think Trump is naive, gullible? Do you think he's going into this with his eyes wide open? And is he a match for Putin, who, of course, is a strategic genius? Love him or loathe him, and believe me, it's a loathe from me.
Well, Putin has been terribly isolated, particularly over the last few years, particularly during COVID. He locked himself away. Many people argue, you talk of his genius, he is a canny operator, there's no doubt about that. But the fact that he invaded Ukraine in the way that he did and is suffering so dreadfully from the consequences of that invasion shows that he actually really can overestimate his hand. Donald Trump is a naive politician. He's a businessman at the end of the day. And he's not used to dealing with the very complex historical, cultural, sort of political situations around the world that he's had to deal with as president. And I'm not just talking about Ukraine, I'm talking about Syria as well, with the Kurds and the Islamic State and others. So he's proven time and time again that he can make mistakes and that he can spin on a dime as well. I'm just hoping that he realized in the last few weeks that that Vladimir Putin is playing him, and that the only way to bring Putin to the table, if he really wants that peace prize that he's been angling for, then he needs to get Putin to the table quite literally by force, essentially, by saying to the allies of Vladimir Putin who are buying his oil, we're going to sanction you if you don't stop.
Well, I want to talk more about those consequences in just a second. Just stay where you are, Maester, because we've got something just in, another clip of President Trump speaking on board Air Force One. Let's hear what the president's been saying recently.
I want certain things. I want to see a ceasefire. This is not to do with Europe. Europe's not telling me what to do. But they're going to be involved in the process, obviously, as will Zelensky. But I want to see a ceasefire rapidly. I don't know if it's going to be today, but I'm not going to be happy if it's not today. Everyone said it can't be today, but I'm just saying I want the killing to stop.
That's President Donald Trump aboard Air Force One. We've just received that clip. Maester, what do you make of what he said there?
Well, he's very much, it shows that Europe has been sidelined from all of this. We haven't taken seriously the threat from Russia over the last decade. In fact, I was talking just recently to some friends about this, and you can still see the images on YouTube of Donald Trump many years ago during his first presidency in the UN saying to German politicians and diplomats, look, you are buying too much Russian oil. You have become addicted to Russian oil. And if there is a conflict in Europe, you're going to be in trouble and your prices are going to go through the roof. You need to diversify. And it's nauseating to watch these German politicians laughing at Donald Trump because much later, obviously, he was proven completely right. So, so Europe has done a lot to weaken its defenses, to allow itself to become insignificant in many ways. But Donald Trump has to listen to Europe at the end of the day. This is a European war. It threatens Britain, it threatens the EU, it threatens all of us here. And I'm just hoping that he takes this incredibly seriously and realizes that you can't keep offering carrots to Vladimir Putin. There has to be a stick somewhere. If you look at their maximist demands, it's very much like the Treaty of Versailles. They want to turn Ukraine into not even a vassal state. They almost wanted to completely destroy it. No army, vast territorial losses, obviously no NATO. They want to dictate Ukraine's future. And they haven't budged from that position. So with Donald Trump coming in, wanting to find peace, with Putin coming in with his absurd demands and being this is an illegal invasion. We're in this very difficult position where you've got Zelensky and Europe, who are the victims here, who are trying to come to a solution, try and push Russia out. And guided by a president who doesn't really know what he's doing, with an enemy that wants everything without and that current hasn't been stopped yet. So we have to come to this a lot more seriously than we currently have.
And when you come to it seriously, is that a diplomatic solution, or do you believe there should be a greater push militarily? What would your solution be, Macer, in terms of defeating Putin, coming to some sort of peace, winning the peace anyway, in regard to Ukraine?
Well, Putin is already reaching pretty much the maximum amount that he can actually go in Ukraine. His summer offensive completely stuttered out. He's already relying on North Korean troops, cannon fodder. He's relying on a vast amount of shells coming from North Korea as well. His own industries are really starting to struggle. And more than that, his economy is beginning to struggle. He is heavily reliant on countries like India and China for oil sales, which are driving this war. So what I would hope to see is that Donald Trump would threaten sanctions and lean diplomatically on these buyers of this blood oil coming from Russia. On top of that, we should be supporting Ukraine with more weapons, and we should be backing them to the hilt. At the end of the day, we were in this position in the 1940s with Nazi Germany breathing down our neck, and it was America supporting us, our own bravery, our own guys pushing out into the front line that finally won the war. So we've really got to rally behind Ukraine and push back.
Okay, Macer, thank you. That's Macer Gifford there, who's a former British volunteer fighter in Ukraine. Many people getting in touch about this, and indeed about the main story we're talking about today, which is Councillor Ricky Jones, who said some pretty horrible things, talking about disgusting Nazi fascists. We need to get rid of them all. But he said that was not intended to incite or encourage violence. He has been cleared by a jury. Let's just remind ourselves of what he said. This was in the heat of the riots last year. This was in Walthamstow on the 7th of August.
You've got children and women using those trains, destroying the summer holidays. They are disgusting, nasty fascists, and we need to hold their throats and get rid of them all.
We need to cut their throats, we need to get rid of them all. Apparently that it was not intended to incite or encourage violence. He's been cleared by a jury today. Sandy in Buckinghamshire is with us now. He's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Sandy, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say about this?
Peter, I'm absolutely furious. It's lovely to talk to you, by the way. We love your shows.
Thank you, Sandy.
I'm just absolutely furious. I've been meaning to call on other things because I just hate what's happening to this country. My father fought for this country, and I don't really want to talk about it because it upsets me so much. But every day there is just something with this government and what's going on. But this today has just made me so angry. I can't believe what's happening to this country.
It's so straightforward, Sandy. It's so straight up and down. It's so clear to me. And I would love to talk to members of that jury and say, what were you thinking here? In what way was he not guilty of inciting or encouraging violence?
He must have been. And I know everybody talks about this all the time, this poor lady. Yes, nobody agrees with what she said, but there is definitely, I mean, for that lawyer that you were talking to earlier to say that there isn't a two-tier justice system, I couldn't believe it when he was saying that, because everybody believes that there is. We're not.
Well, I just think it's so straightforward that different people are treated in different ways, and all we want is equality before the law, a fair system, and we haven't got a fair system at the moment.
Absolutely not. I mean, there's that. I saw today on the television there's a woman being arrested, or I don't know whether she was charged, but the poor woman, where a migrant went into her home, and she's the one that got told off by the police. The migrant got off scot-free every day.
I'm not familiar with that case, Sandy, but so I'll certainly look into it. But I do think as well, Sandy, that We've got to remain hopeful that there's some change coming, that this will we're not in a doom spiral here, that something will get better, because there are so many stories, and we're just telling the news here, which are so depressing, and we've just got to realise there are great things about this country. You live in Buckinghamshire. I mean, I've spent quite a lot of time there. It's a beautiful county. There are great people there, and they're lovely. There are things to look forward to. But when you hear these things, you just think, well, can we get a fair deal?
I know, and we aren't right wing by any means. We just want, I know we're not supposed to say this either, and people say, what do you mean? We just want our country back. We want it, we're not living in the past. We've moved on. We're in our 70s now, and we've paid into the system all these years and expect something. We want to be looked after, but it seems to be this government don't want to look after the people here. I don't know. It's, to me, or we often say, my husband and I, there's something sinister going on. Yeah. And I like to think something positive is coming. But another thing you might not have heard today, we've heard that the establishment with the government, there's things going on behind the scenes to try and, this is totally undemocratic, but to stop reform getting in. Nobody wants reform in those circles.
Well, hopefully that can be avoided, and hopefully we can get a fully free and fair election. Sandy, will you do me a favour, you and your husband, over the weekend? Will you do something lovely and positive and fun, even if it's just going to the pub for a pint, or watching a nice video, a nice film, or something that makes you proud of your country and puts a smile on your face, Sandy? Because there's so much doom and gloom, and I want to make sure that you do something fun and nice that puts a smile on your face over the weekend. Will you do that for me?
Oh, bless you. Yes, will do. Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Good to talk to you, Sandy. All the very best to you. That's Sandy there in Buckinghamshire. Thank you to Glyn saying, Mr. Gifford, giving the best analysis I've heard of the Trump-Putin Ukraine situation. I agree with you, Glyn. I thought it was really, really excellent. We'll definitely have him back on. Chris in Newbury says, Mr. Gifford, who's such an expert in policy like Starmer, Macron and the rest, hasn't ended a single war in his life. He's just a commentator. Trump has Putin at the table. Nobody else has. Let Trump do his thing, says Chris. And on Ricky Jones, Lorraine says, how did we ever get into a position where a jury, by failing to convict Jones, have found it acceptable to incite the slitting of throats of the far right? In effect, it is okay to incite murder and violence against a certain political group. This is more than sinister. Our judiciary is in the toilet. We need some very serious answers. How did the judge sum the case up? What was the makeup of this jury? Because I cannot understand how Britain has sunk so low. A very, very dangerous development in the downward direction of this country. Well, we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the BBC journalist John Simpson, who's been putting out absolute nonsense, complete misinformation about Gaza, and indeed about Angela Rayner. An advisor to her says that Israel controls the United States. I can tell you right now that similar to what John Simpson put out, is absolute bunkum. We'll talk to Nicole Lambert in just a second and get her common sense and clear views and truth about all of this here on Talk in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
think this is so damaging to the government that keeps on trying to pretend to be confused at the suggestion that there is such a thing as two-tier justice in our country. And did you notice in the footage that we played just now of that deplorable individual making those comments, and there were a load of people around him clapping and cheering at those comments? It wasn't like everyone went quiet and looked shocked. You know, this was just sort of like, yeah, let's bring it on, folks. Let's talk about slitting throats.
Ricky Jones has been found not guilty of encouraging violent disorder. I'm gobsmacked.
I just think it'll tell a lot of people that that there is two-tier justice, that people get treated differently, and it will just not. I just think it will damage even further the confidence that people have in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, I just think that people will be listening to this and watching and thinking about the whole two-tier dynamic, which of course has been more and more accentuated, I think, over the last 12
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thank you so much to everybody who's been in touch, mainly on Ricky Jones, it must be said. Let me read out a couple of tweets before we go to Nicole Lambert. Stuart says he's a counsellor, Lucy Connolly was not. He said that people's throats should be slit. That is an indisputable fact. He's shown a contempt for the system in this country when he is as guilty as can be. London Oil Trader says if Ricky Jones was white, he would have been convicted. Ray says, Peter, when I was a police officer, it was well known that if you ever wanted a sympathetic journey, get your case to Snaresbrook Crown Court. I wish we knew the makeup of the jury. Philip says Labour councillor Ricky Jones said about protesters, we need to cut their throats and get rid of them all. I spoke in the heat of the moment, he said. So did Lucy Connolly. She was fast-tracked and sent to jail for 31 months. This stinks to high heaven. Kate says, I'm so furious about this news, Peter. What Ricky Jones said was disgusting. Another person says, good afternoon, Peter. Today a clear message was sent to everyone. If the police want to talk to you, say nothing. If they read you your rights, get a half-decent lawyer. If they charge you, plead not guilty. All benefits of honesty just went out the window. Ian says, is it any wonder trust in the legal system is so low? We see inexcusable actions and people not getting convicted. All we see is slimy lawyers getting their clients off the hook with technicalities. And Rachel, talking about Sandy, who was on the line there from Buckinghamshire recently, says Sandy isn't alone in her frustration. Mabel as well says, in my opinion, based on his own words and gestures in the video, Ricky Jones came across as clearly guilty and the footage is still available to view. Was he on an Amnesty International march? Plenty of others cheered his statement on the march, including the woman in the orange jacket. You're absolutely correct. We did make inquiries into her and whether she was someone who should be, the further inquiry should be made into. Sandy says, my village square in Suffolk has always had Union Jack flags all around it, as do other Suffolk towns like Framlingham. They have never been classed as dangerous. What a load of old cobblers from Birmingham. And just finally, from Elisa in Chelmsford. Hi, Peter. Without trust in our justice system, democracy is dead in the UK. It's terrifying, and until trust is restored, the public has every right to be concerned and angry. Keep fighting the good fight for us, says Elisa in Chelmsford. Well, thank you. Another person who absolutely fights the good fight is the journalist Nicole Lambert, who joins us now. Nicole, can I just get your thoughts, first of all, in regard to Ricky Jones? I know you've been tweeting about this afternoon.
Yeah, this is a Labour councillor, so this is someone that you expect really to behave a bit better. And I think it shows us a little bit about the nature of what those the pro-immigration and anti-fascists, as they call themselves, what was going on there, which was not only was there aggressive, contemptuous demonstrating, and riling things up, but also on those demonstrations we also saw quite a lot of anti-Semitism at the time. So just because they are anti-immigration lot doesn't mean they're good people, and he completely epitomised that. In terms of whether it's two-tier justice, it's hard to say, because obviously he did go to court and he was found not guilty by a jury, and perhaps one of the issues is that Lucy Connolly, thinking that she would be doing a good thing, is that she pled guilty. Perhaps she shouldn't have done that. But apart from that, it's hard to tell there's any difference between the two things, apart from the fact that she did it in the middle of riots, while there was no riot that followed what he said. But that doesn't mean that there couldn't have been. There was lots of police on the ground, and there was certainly, it looked like there could be violence at that time.
Nicole, there's a couple of stories around that are really interesting. One of them is John Simpson, the great doyen of the BBC's world affairs coverage. He's been all over the place. He told us he liberated Kabul single-handedly. I'm not sure he did, to be honest. He's been criticised over debunked data on Gaza journalist deaths. Just talk us through this, because it is extraordinary that someone who has his reputation, who's fated as this amazing expert on world affairs, gets it so incredibly badly wrong, showing yet again the BBC's willingness at all levels to just believe things that are bad about Israel.
Well, that's exactly it. So there was this report that came out from a university in America. It was quoted not only by him, but by Amnesty, which is a massive Israel hater. I saw it in the Observer readout this morning as well. So he's certainly not the only one, but of course he is regarded, as you said, as this doyen of BBC reporting, you know, a kind of the veteran, one of the most famous BBC foreign reporters. And to get it so wrong is ridiculous. So lots of journalists have been killed in Gaza. Many of them were related to Hamas, including at least one of the 5 that were killed this week. So that's why he came out with it. He said around 274, which made it bigger than all the previous wars altogether, which was complete rubbish. Even if you bring in what happened in Syria, where they believe around 700 journalists were killed, or the Iraq War, which even the report said it wasn't including the Iraq War for some reason. And then you have things like what happened in World War II, where hundreds of Russian journalists, for example, were killed, and thousands of Jewish journalists were, of course, killed in the Holocaust. So, of course, anyone that read it would think immediately, how can that possibly be right? That other journalists, when 50 million people were killed in total over World War II, how could it possibly be the case that more journalists would be killed in Gaza? So to anyone who has, you know, a kind of brain on their shoulders, who isn't Israel obsessed, then it's nonsensical. But when you are going down this dark road that he's gone down and many others have gone down, where it becomes disinformation, where basically you want to say Israel is the worst, the absolute worst at everything. So they are the worst at genocide. They are the worst at white supremacism. They are the worst at killing journalists. They are the worst at killing doctors. They are the worst at killing children. So this just all adds to the libel upon libel upon libel upon lie, really, which, you know, to me, all adds to a horrible anti-Semitic atmosphere in this country, and it's a strange one, because they're fighting Islamic militants, they're fighting terrorists, and that seems to be forgotten. That everyone, all of the journalists that are getting angry about this, they're completely not taking any notice of the fact that this guy was in Hamas. We know for certain, even the BBC admits that he worked for Hamas before the war. And so it just feels ridiculous that once again, Hamas and the fact that it's an Islamic terrorist group is being completely ignored.
Yeah, and speaking of anti-Semitism, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, has apparently ignored complaints about allegedly anti-Semitic posts written by a member of the House of Lords advising ministers on the definition of Islamophobia. Baroness Goher, who is one of 5 figures appointed to the working group on defining anti-Muslim hatred in February, previously claimed that Israel controls the US in several social media posts. Who controls America's foreign policy? Israel. They would be the only beneficiaries of a US attack on Syria. She wrote in 2013, will Israel influence the US vote on whether to invade Syria? Are the Americans really in control of their own decisions? She later wrote, US warns Israel over Palestine talks failure. I bet Israel are quaking in their boots, not don't they control the US? I mean, this is someone who shouldn't be within a country mile of any government post, or indeed one of the parts of the legislature of this country.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic anti-Semitic trope that certainly started around the 19th century in the Chronicles of the Elders of Zion, this idea that Jews somehow controlled the earth and were doing everything in their power to control world government. For what end, I don't know. You would have thought that sort of libel would die in the Second World War, where 6 million Jews, no matter how powerful or rich they were all murdered by the Nazis. You would have thought that would put that to bed, but it just continues, and it's really mad, because anyone who spent any time with any Jews knows that they really, you know, they argue so much that they can't organise a demonstration without falling out with each other, as they did last weekend. So it's ridiculous, and it is ridiculous that someone like that should be advising the government on a kind of new race law. But and this is one of the problems. There is many question marks over the people who are behind the definition of Islamophobia. There's question marks over whether Islamophobia should even be defined and whether anti-Muslim hatred is already covered under the Equality Act. Do we need another definition? And the definition that was first talked about a few years ago and that they are kind of working from, it means that all sorts of things that people have said, that you and I talk about, whether, you know, even the idea of Islamic terrorism, even that can be called Islamophobic. So one of some of the people that are advising them, they've already formed a watchdog where they looked at newspapers, and any newspaper report that covers Islamic terrorism, that is regarded as an Islamophobic report. So there's all sorts of question marks. There are question marks over who is allowed to advise this. I've spoken to lots of moderate Muslims. They're very unhappy about the makeup of the people that are coming up with this. And the people that are coming up with it are also behind the same people that are now behind a new watchdog that will be looking at Islamophobic incidents. So the previous group, Tal Mama, who were quite close to the Jewish community and worked together with the CST, which does the same for the Jewish community, they've been disbanded. Well, they've certainly been thrown off. They're not getting the government money. And this new group, which is closely linked to the people coming up with the definition. So the people that are coming up with the definition will then be policing it. And it just, there's lots of question marks over it. And it's certainly people in the Muslim community that have messaged me and are quite unhappy with the way things are going. And they believe that the government is making serious mistakes with these people that they're trusting.
Nicole, as always, thank you. That's the journalist Nicole Lampert there. Let us know what you think about all of this. 0344 499 1000. We'll talk more about Ricky Jones, and we will take a look inside the Sun tomorrow. Lots to discuss, including a woke Hamlet. Stay with us here on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, thanks so much to everybody who has been in touch. Lots of people want to get in on the Ricky Jones verdict. We will, of course, take more calls between now and 7 o'clock. Ian Collins is here between 7 and 10. Kevin did earlier, as you may know, and Ian is here between 7 and 10. Usually what just happened is on at 9 o'clock, but actually, because of what's happening in Alaska, got a full show right through 7 till 10 this evening, and Ian will be in the chair for that. Let's talk about what's in the Sun tomorrow. We've got John Lucas with us, who is, of course, the night news editor at the paper. Hello, John. How are you doing?
Evening. Very well.
Good to see you. The TikTok migrant, there's so much more about him. He was sacked from his job flipping burgers.
That's right. So this is the chap we've had a big week on migrant coverage this week, and this is the chap we were covering as the figures sort of hit that 50,000 mark this week. This guy was on his way over. We sort of tracked his journey on TikTok. This is our, very tech-savvy reporter, Thomas Godfrey, has been all over this one. And we told previously how he'd recorded this video in Germany, essentially explaining to people, how you kill your wife and how
really
you
shocking
get away.
stuff.
Absolutely unbelievable. You'd like to think that, things are in motion to sort of get hold of him and get him, on the fast track back out of here, but obviously we don't know what's going on there. Anyway, what we found out today is actually he was in Germany for 3 years. He was flipping burgers in a Berlin kebab takeaway called Munches, because over there they have very different rules. So if you get through your 15 months sort of probation period, you can work, whereas over here that the migrants don't have that ability. So he was working there, he was housed there, he was there for 3 years. But people have come on and told us that he was very poor at his job, couldn't be bothered. He was sacked because he was late all the time, unprofessional, and so what he's decided to do is come to a country where he found it a bit easier, realised that he wouldn't have to work. And we've seen the videos of him trying to sell this experience to other people like himself, and. It's just the latest sort of chapter in this story.
Yeah. Just shows yet again that he should be absolutely nowhere near this country. Speaking of people making long journeys, you're going to have full coverage tomorrow, of course, of the Eagles landing in Alaska.
Yeah, massive. Well, it's the biggest story in the world, isn't it? It could well be, it's going to go on over the weekend. So I think we've got 2.5 hours. Trump's going to meet Putin off the plane, we think. Over the course of the afternoon, we've heard a bit more from both sides. Trump's sort of sounding fairly positive. He thinks he's going to get a deal, but he also said, if it doesn't suit me, I'm just going to walk away. It's not really anything to do with me. I'm just trying to help out. I think there's a bit more to it than that. But also from the Kremlin, they say, well, this could go on for 6 or 7 hours. There were some good signs. Putin laid flowers at a war memorial as he's making his progress over there to Alaska. There was a shared memorial for Russia and US soldiers, a bit of a signalling that I'm open to negotiations. Whereas Lavrov, their foreign minister, turned up in a Soviet Union sweatshirt. So Trump's the reality TV star president. Everything's a bit of a drama with him. And it seems like Putin and Lavrov are playing ball. It's going to be dramatic, whatever happens. Lots of businessmen with them as well, Russian businessmen. And Trump said, well, look, I like that because I'm a businessman. I want to make deals, but they're only going to happen once there's a ceasefire, and I want that to happen this weekend, he's actually said.
There'll be lots of coverage of that, lots to read about, lots to watch, and of course I'm here tomorrow morning between 10 and 1 and we'll have full coverage of everything that has been discussed in Alaska. Another big thing, of course, this weekend is the Premier League season kicking off tonight with Liverpool. A poignant one for them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So we've seen some images of the tributes to Diogo Jota at Anfield already. We believe, the programme's going to be a big tribute to Jota as well. Obviously, sadly lost his life earlier in the summer in this horrible car crash. And, we understand there might be his family members are going to be there as well, so it's going to be a big occasion. But, I mean, beyond that, thank goodness Premier League's back. Some of us had to do our Sun Dream Teams very last minute this morning, but I'm feeling fairly positive.
Feeling confident?
Feeling quite confident about it. I didn't do too well last season, but this could be the year. Elsewhere in the paper, we've got some sort of newsy football stories. We've got Man U's new signing, Matheus Cunha. He's bought a new £5 million Cheshire mansion to sort of ease himself into English football. Just happens to be the previous home of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So he's hoping that that's going to... And we've got some lovely detail about that very nice property. And we've got a little funny story about Phil Foden, absolute shocking parking in his G-Wagon.
Excellent.
Terrible.
Have you seen the cab that looks like Phil Foden?
I've not
seen that one.
Yeah, no, I know.
You remember that? You remember the one I'm talking
yeah.
about? Yeah, I'm a big cat person, so that's how I know who Phil Foden is. Tell us as well about Hamlet, 2PC or not 2PC. Get thee to your punnery, John.
Yes, well, this is the very little-known Shakespearean tragedy, Hamlet. Apparently, it's a bit too sad. There's a bit too much death, so audiences now have to be warned about this. It's obviously to be or not to be. That is. I'm not going to try and quote too much Hamlet,
okay?
Because I'm not a big Shakespeare man. But
I want to see King Lear with a friend of mine. He's a really intelligent person. She's a graduate of Oxford University. I promise you, we were halfway through and having a drink at half time, and I said, you know, what do you make of it so far? And she said, yeah, it's really good, but I just a really bad feeling about the second half. I just think it could all go wrong. It's like, let me introduce you to the concept of Shakespearean tragedy. But this one we have flags of trigger warnings of grief, suicide, mental illness. I mean, anyone who's even vaguely familiar with Hamlet will know all this. I think
there's
been around for 400 years.
That's right. I think there's 6 or 7 deaths in Hamlet, and it's all about the guy going mad. And I think if you're turning up to Hamlet, you probably don't need to be patronised with this. The only bit of Hamlet that I do know is the last scene from With Now and I. That's my reference point for Hamlet.
I have of late, wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth. That one.
Fantastic.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of With Now and I.
Right,
you want the finest wines available to humanity. You want them here and we want them now. John, good man, thank you very much. That's John Lucas, who is night news editor of The Sun. Plenty in the paper tomorrow, and indeed on my show we'll be discussing Alaska and what happens there between 10 and 1 tomorrow. Let us know your thoughts on all of it, including Ricky Jones. I'll take some more calls between now and 7 o'clock when Ian Collins comes up. 0344 499 1000. Stay with us.
Our world is becoming more unstable, more dangerous. We should reflect back on the sacrifice that was given to challenge the adversaries, the tyrannies of the day, back in the Second World War. King Charles said himself, it is a reflection just of the importance of what our armed forces do, the sacrifice they make to watch our backs, allow us to sleep at night, and defend what's important to us. We've allowed that guard to drop, and we need to prepare for difficult times ahead.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Michael is in London and has given me a ring on 0344 499 1000 about the migration situation in this country. Michael, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Yeah, hi there, Peter. I mean, I watch you guys, listen to you guys all day, every day, pretty much.
And this morning, I thought my head was going to explode this morning, because it just went from one story to another, from the Birmingham pulling down all the Union Jack and St George's flags, to the Ricky Jones thing, to Mr TikTok.
Yeah.
And it's to me, it's got like a sinister feel now, that there seems to be so many people like poking the bear, which is us, and it's almost to a point of a deliberate act to sort of like get us all worked up to such a rage that it's going to sort of eventually kick off. You know what I mean?
Well, let's hope it doesn't kick off. And I mean, what we have seen certainly, Michael, is many people who have been peacefully protesting things like migration outside those hotels. There have been very few arrests. So there were 15 arrests a couple of weekends ago, but many thousands of people there. And obviously those people who were arrested, I'm sure, will face the full force of the law. The point is, though, that there's so many stories, there's so many things that keep happening all the time that make us feel like mugs.
Yes, exactly that. And the Ricky Jones thing, his actions was actually directed at me and people like me, because I was at the last sort of like patriotic rally last year. It's the only one I've ever been on, and that followed, his rant came following that, or almost like addressing those people on that rally, who most of them were just patriotic Brits.
And you didn't break the law at all, I'm sure, Michael. You were there simply protesting.
Nothing happened. It just was thousands and thousands of people marched from Victoria up to Whitehall. No problems. Nothing went down at all. My first time ever, and it was completely peaceful. And then I saw that rant, and I thought that was directed at me, because my dad was an ex-military vet. My mum was in London through the Blitz as a nanny, working for a family.
Yeah.
So they both came through. They both survived, shall we say, to start a family. So my father had passed away about 10 years ago, but his 100th birthday would have been last November. So that was the main reason I went along, to sort of celebrate. Well, not to celebrate it, but just to sort of in memory of him. So
yes. Well, and you felt you had to join that protest, yeah?
Yes. Well, it wasn't a protest. It was just a rally. I mean, it was just a march. There was no protest, really. There's no shouting and screaming of anything. It was just people getting together to sort of celebrate the flag and the country. Okay.
Well, Michael, thanks for your thoughts there. That's Michael in London there. Give me a ring at 03444991000. Shortly, Putin and Trump are going to land in Alaska. If you're watching on the screen, you can see images there as they're preparing for the first plane to arrive. There's a red carpet as well for one of the leaders to arrive. We will see what happens there. That's Anchorage in Alaska, military base where Trump and Putin are going to meet in about an hour and a half's time. In the meantime, we will of course bring you full coverage. Ian Collins is coming up in about 10 minutes time. Chris in Manchester is on the line and wants to talk about Councillor Ricky Jones. Chris, you're very welcome to the programme. Tell us your thoughts today.
Yeah, good afternoon, Peter. I am an ex-police officer, so I do have some. I'm not saying I'm an expert, certainly not when it comes to incitement. I think a number of people, perhaps with respect, including yourself, may be getting the wrong end of the stick. What is not at issue and what this imbecile said, that's not the question. The question is whether or not there was incitement was involved. And I can tell you from personal experience that incitement is fiendishly difficult to prove, because you've got to prove beyond doubt what that person's state of mind was at the time, and that he intended that a person of reasonable firmness, i.e. the gentleman on the Clapham omnibus, I think is the term, would believe that unlawful violence is likely to take place, and it has to be immediate, that there has to be an immediacy. It's not a question of him saying it and then 2 or 3 days later something happening. It has to be immediate.
Okay, well listen, thanks for the explanation, Chris. In fairness, I don't think people are getting the wrong end of the stick necessarily. You've given us more detail and more precision on all of that, and thanks for it, Chris. It's really helpful and really useful to know all of that. My point is, isn't it reasonable for many people to think that that's exactly what he was doing?
I've absolutely no doubt that's what he was doing. And as I said to your researcher, what I'm slightly disappointed at is that even though the jury weren't able to find him guilty of the incitement, I'm not entirely sure why a lesser indictment wasn't put to him along the lines of an affray or just a public order offence, because it's quite clear that his words certainly amounted to an affray. where you don't have to prove the incitement. It's a much lesser offence. It's a summary offence and not one that would probably carry a custodial sentence.
Okay.
But at least it would have been a conviction.
Yes.
And that's quite normal in, as I'm sure you're aware, in Crown Court trials.
Of course, yeah. You try to get something out of it. Yeah, if you're prosecuting, yeah.
If someone, say, charged with a serious assault and they might be found guilty of a lesser assault, that's perfectly normal. And I'm not entirely sure why that wasn't either considered or thought of at the time, because I'm quite sure that what he said was enough for a straightforward public order offence. Whether it's enough for the incitement, as I say, I'm perfectly sure that that's what he meant. The difficulty is proving it.
Sure.
And I'm not entirely sure that people are being totally fair with the jury. I mean, I've seen some pretty perverse jury decisions in my time, so it doesn't surprise me. And to be honest with you, I was a little bit surprised when the guy was convicted at Liverpool Crown Court recently, because it is very difficult to get anything home at Liverpool Crown Court. I can tell you from personal experience.
Okay, listen, thanks, Chris. Really appreciate that. Useful context, useful expertise from Chris there. He's a former police officer himself. Karen's in Ayrshire. Karen, what do you make of it?
Well, I think it's terrible that he's been found not guilty. The whole country knows he was guilty. Cut their throats, enticing murder.
I mean, it's interesting what Chris is saying there, and that it's difficult to prove the intent, that that's absolutely definitely what he meant at the time. There's no doubt in my mind, Karen. It sounds as if there's no doubt in yours either.
No. And there's lots of people like Lucy Connolly that got locked up, you know. There was Peter Lynch. He killed himself in prison.
That's right.
He got locked up straight away, and his family must be going through hell, you know. And I read this morning that they said Ricky Jones had mental problems or something. Well, so did Lucy Connolly. She lost her daughter.
Yeah, there's all these mitigations, all these different ways in which people try to plead and say, well, actually, I didn't mean it, or I'm going through a tough time, or all the rest of it. And that's fine. You want to put the best case forward, but I would really love to know what those people on the jury were thinking.
I know. It's unbelievable. I think there's a lot of people upset by this. It's just not right.
Yeah.
And like your previous caller said about the flags, you know, the Union flag not being... It's just not being able to fly that, you know.
Yeah, well, indeed, and people just feel that. I mean, we've got two of them behind me today, Karen, and they're certainly in my show. I don't know what Ian Collins will think, but they're going nowhere anyway. Karen, listen, thanks for your thoughts. I really appreciate them. Bill Hammond has been in touch on text 87222 with the word talk in his text as well, saying once Trump's 4-year presidency is over, just time to come over here and lead Reform UK to government. My goodness, I wonder whether Nigel Farage would give up leadership of Reform UK for Donald Trump to take it over. That would be a very interesting one. We can see on the screen, if you're watching on the screen, I'll describe for you if you're listening on the radio. Alaska 2025, that is the sign that is there. And Anchorage in Alaska, the military base, there's a red carpet and indeed steps up to for a plane. We know that both presidents will be arriving very, very shortly. President Trump and President Putin will be, I think they're sort of moving that big sign now on the stage that is there. There seem to be some military officers who are doing that. We'll keep you right up to date in terms of exactly what is happening. Lots of busy people around there. Just time before we have a quick chat with Ian Collins to speak to Richard in Bristol, our final call of Drive today. Richard's given me a ring on 0344 499 1000. Richard, you're very welcome to the programme. What would you like to say?
Oh, hi, Peter. But we've actually spoken once before about a more frivolous situation.
Well, nice to talk to you again, Richard.
Yeah, well, and you too. The two most famous people, apart from Trump and Starmer, I think at the moment, you've got Ricky Jones and Lucy Connolly.
Yeah.
I was listening to the programme earlier on, as I do.
Yeah. Okay. Richard? You still there?
Yes, I was listening to the programme earlier on.
Yes.
As I do. I was in the car, so I wasn't able to get back in touch with you. But the main reason for the call, I was listening to that lawyer that you were discussing the case with.
Yes.
And he intimated that Starmer has always tried to claim that he keeps out of the situation of law now. And it's nothing could be further than the truth. When you look at what he did with Lucy Connolly, she was in court within a week. I mean, this guy's taken a year to get there.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, look, she did plead guilty. This guy pleaded not guilty. It takes longer for these things. But I think that's a very, very fair point, Richard, certainly when we look into this and we think about this. And of course, the atmosphere, the context is different because this summer is a lot quieter than last summer. Richard, listen, we've got to leave it there, but thank you so much for your message. I want to thank Sandy as well, who was on the line on the phone a little bit earlier on, who sent a lovely message as well, and says that she'd like to welcome me to where she lives and buy me a pint, and for listening to her rant, as she puts it earlier. First of all, it wasn't a rant, it was perfectly reasonable comments, Sandy, and thank you for that. I really appreciate that invitation, and I hope you and your husband have a lovely weekend. Certainly it's going to be a dramatic weekend, a dramatic few hours coming up in Alaska. Ian Collins is here to cover it all between 7 and 10.
Stalked?
No, it's nice. Sandy's lovely.
Sandy's lovely, yeah.
We had a little chat earlier.
A pint, yeah. Staying over the weekend,
No, I shouldn't say stay over the weekend. She said, if I'm in the area, I think it's
if I'm in the area.
It's a nice thing. Yeah. It's a nice thing. People are nice.
There is a woman standing outside the building, by the way, with a placard saying Peter Cardwell on it.
Just Peter Cardwell, like Palestine Action, but worse.
Yeah. Cardwell Action.
Dear. A terrifying thought. Right. In
really
Alaska, over the next 3 hours, you're going to be
we're all over Alaska. Of course, on the back of VJ Day, which, it's slightly been, I wouldn't say it's been relegated today. It's been a huge story, of course. But, you look at what our forefathers kind of gave up, often their lives. 500,000 Brits in the Second World War lost their lives. What would those people make of today? When they look at the world today, when they look at council saying you can't put a flag up there, you look at the TikTok migrant doing his thing, you look at somebody who can suggest you cut people's throats and walk free out of a courtroom, you look at all, you think, I wonder what they thought back then. If they'd have predicted what it would look like in 80 years' time, they wouldn't have predicted any of this in a million years.
And some people say, what were they fighting for with the country and the state that it's in?
Well, indeed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an absolute bloody mess, to be honest. I mean, it's all over the place. It doesn't need to be like this. It really doesn't need to be like this. So we're looking at that. We will look at the councillor story in more detail. Of course, Peter Barnes is in with us.